Chapter 37:16. Lu Yichuan's strength isn't bad. I didn't sense the aura of a star weapon from him. It seems like the star weapon fragment isn't on him. Does that mean it's still hidden somewhere in the Clear Heart Society? If Lu Yichuan doesn't have the star weapon fragment, then he's no match for Yu Tianxiang, Di Wenxing thought to himself. The battle between Yu Tianxiang and Lu Yichuan became more and more intense. Everyone in the plaza began to retreat, not daring to approach. Fortunately, there were arrays set up around the stage. Otherwise, the ripples from the battle would have caused many casualties. Heavenly Dipper Stick. Suddenly, Yu Tianxiang leaped up, raised the golden stick above his head, and smashed it down. The power of the stick was too terrifying. Golden energy overflowed and formed a huge shadow of a giant stick in the air that smashed towards Lu Yichuan. Lu Yichuan's face changed. He realized that he had miscalculated. Although Yu Tianxiang's cultivation was similar to his, he was still stronger. His chances of winning this battle weren't high. Iron Fang Wolf Dance. Lu Yichuan was helpless and used his strongest ability. He swung his mace, and purplish-blue energy exploded, forming a huge purple wolf that pounced towards the golden stick. Boom! The shadow of the giant stick smashed onto the wolf, shattering it. Then, without losing any momentum, it landed on Lu Yichuan's body. Poochie! Lu Yichuan spat out a mouthful of blood and fell out of the stage. He clutched his chest and looked at Yu Tianxiang in disbelief. You're also at the pinnacle of the spirit transformation realm. How can you be so powerful? Lu Yichuan struggled to stand up and asked unwillingly. Yu Tianxiang didn't answer his question. Instead, he descended from the sky. The golden stick in his hand didn't slow down and continued to hit Lu Yichuan. Yu Tianxiang, I've already lost. Lu Yichuan's face changed, but the speed of the golden stick was too fast. He raised his hands to block it. Crack! His hands shattered, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent back into the stage. Who said you've lost? As long as you're still in the stage, you have to continue fighting. Yu Tianxiang's cold voice sounded. Then, his figure moved around the stage like a ghost. Every time he flashed, a shadow of the staff would appear and hit Lu Yichuan's body solidly. Moreover, Yu Tianxiang would purposely leave Lu Yichuan in the stage with each attack. Lu Yichuan was shocked and angry, but his injuries were very serious, and he could only passively resist. His body was constantly being bombarded with terrifying injuries by the golden rod. The members of the Clear Heart Society were in an uproar. Yu Tianxiang, you've gone too far. Our president has already admitted defeat. Why are you still attacking him? All the members of the Clear Heart Society protested. Some of them even rushed towards the stage to save Lu Yichuan. Right. The they. TTT they. TTTTTTT's a. T. Looks like the Yunjin Lord Manor wants to use this opportunity to deal with the Clear Heart Society. Miss Fan Shuang, let's go back to the Gujian Manor and report this to the Manor Lord. Yi Jian grabbed Fan Shuang and rushed out of the square. The 10 sword guards were only loyal to the Gujian Manor. They did not have much affection for the Clear Heart Society. Therefore, Yi Jian left with Fan Shuang immediately. Yu Tianxiang, don't go overboard. You're using your power to avenge your private grudge. Lu Yichuan shouted angrily. He started to burn his blood essence. He wanted to fight to the death. Yu Tianxiang's expression changed. Lu Yichuan's strength was not much weaker than his. Although he was suppressing Lu Yichuan, he was also injured. Now that Lu Yichuan was burning his blood essence, his strength would increase rapidly. It would be difficult for him to suppress him. Brother Di, don't just watch. Yu Tianxiang shouted. The old man with white hair and a youthful face who was sitting on the tower suddenly stood up. He jumped out and appeared in front of Lu Yichuan. Di Wenxing's right hand formed a palm. Blue energy surged in his palm and landed on Lu Yichuan's chest. Fat. After burning his blood essence, Lu Yichuan's aura became much stronger. However, he still fell to the ground without any resistance. Lu Yichuan fell to the ground. His aura was weak as he stared at the old man with white hair and a youthful face. A heaven-trampling transformation realm expert? Lu Yichuan said in fear. Di Wenxing slowly walked down from the sky and landed beside Lu Yichuan. He said indifferently, Lu Yichuan, you disdained the rules of the territorial lord selection. I have to punish you. Don't blame me. As he said that, Di Wenxing waved his right hand. A dark green fog spread out. Lu Yichuan's eyelids became heavy and he fainted. Brother Di, you really hid your strength well. You actually have a heaven-trampling transformation realm cultivation. Yu Tianxiang came to Di Wenxing's side. His eyes were filled with fear. He had thought that Di Wenxing was only at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. Now, it seemed that he was completely wrong. Di Wenxing's cultivation was much higher than his. It seemed that he did not need to consider the astral weapon fragment in the Clear Heart Society. He was not Di Wenxing's match. Territorial Lord Yu, I'll leave Lu Yichuan to you. He's much more valuable alive than dead. Di Wenxing said meaningfully. Yu Tianxiang nodded. After he arranged for someone to take Lu Yichuan away, he personally killed all the members of the Clear Heart Society. After he was done, he announced loudly, the Clear Heart Society has disdained the rules of the territorial lord selection and caused a riot. Therefore, the Yunjin Territorial Lord's Office has the right to arrest all the rioters of the Clear Heart Society. I believe that no one has any objections. Below the arena, the crowd had already hidden far away. Now that Yu Tianxiang had already said this, what else could they say? Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Yu Tianxiang was planning to use this opportunity to make a move on the Clear Heart Society. They had also guessed that the Yunjin Territorial Lord's Office would make a big move against the Clear Heart Society. The dispute between the two major forces in the Yunjin Territorial Lord's Office was naturally not something that unrelated people like them would casually get involved. From the Territorial Lord's Office behind the square, troops of cultivators walked out. There were thousands of them. Let's go. Today, I, Yu Tianxiang, will go to the Clear Heart Society to demand an explanation. I, Yu Tianxiang, am not a person who likes to cause trouble. However, if anyone dares to bully me, I, Yu Tianxiang, will definitely pursue the matter to the end. After saying that, Yu Tianxiang led the thousands of cultivators and headed towards the Clear Heart Society's encampment. It seems that the Territorial Lord's Office is going to make a move on the Clear Heart Society. This is going to be a bloodbath. I think this will be a one-sided battle. The Clear Heart Society's president, Lu Yichuan, has been captured by Yu Tianxiang. Now that the Clear Heart Society has no leader, how can it be a match for the organized Territorial Lord's Office? Chapter 37:17. Yi Jian brought Fan Shuang along and soon, they arrived at the Gujian villa. After they entered the villa, they knocked on Zhuowen's door. Creak. Zhuowen opened the door and looked at Yi Jian and Fan Shuang. He frowned and asked, isn't today the day of the Grand Lord selection? Why are you back so early? Fan Shuang said anxiously, Master Zhuo, something bad has happened. The Yunjin mansion has attacked the Mingxin Society. Fan Shuang told Zhuowen everything that had happened during the Grand Lord selection. Zhuowen fell into deep thought. He knew that the mansion and the Mingxin Society had a lot of conflicts. It was only a matter of time before the two sides fought. However, he did not expect this day to come so soon. Villa Master, forgive me for being blunt. The Mingxin Society is done for. This time, a heaven-trampling state elite is helping Yu Tianxiang. The Mingxin Society will not survive. Gujian Villa does not need to get involved in this mess. We can just stay out of it, Yi Jian said. Fan Shuang was shocked and quickly said, Gujian Villa belongs to the Mingxin Society. Now that the Mingxin Society is here, Gujian Villa will not be able to escape. Yi Jian shook his head and said, Miss Fan Shuang, I think you are mistaken. The first Villa Master and Lu Yichuan were good friends. Although the first Villa Master has fallen, it does not mean that Gujian Villa belongs to the Mingxin Society. The two of them are just partners. The Mingxin Society's enemy is too strong. Gujian Villa's combat power is not strong. We want to help the Mingxin Society, but we are powerless. Fan Shuang's eyes were filled with sadness. After knowing that Di Wenxing was a heaven-trampling state elite, Fan Shuang knew that the Mingxian society had no hope. So what if Zhuowen was strong? In Fan Shuang's eyes, Zhuowen's strength was at most at Lu Yichuan's level. He could not save the Mingxian society. Master Zhuo, I am from the Mingxian society's business department. Now that the Mingxian society is in danger, I have to go back and help. Fan Shuang forced a smile at Zhuowen and left Gujian Villa. Manor Lord, let's go back. There's also a second stage Heaven Breaker formation in the manor. It won't be easy for Yu Tianxiang to break into the manor, Yi Jian said. One sword, summon the other 10 sword guards. We're going to the Clear Heart Society's headquarters, Zhuowen said calmly. One sword was stunned. He wanted to say something, but when he met Zhuowen's cold gaze, he didn't dare to say anything. Right now, I'm the Villa Master of Gujian Villa. It's not up to you to order me around. Now, gather the 10 sword guards for me. Do you hear me? Zhuowen's voice was bone-chilling as he spoke word by word. One sword could not help but tremble. He hurriedly agreed and entered the ancient sword villa. Not long after, the 10 sword guardians gathered in front of Zhuowen. Go. Zhuowen didn't say much. After saying this, he lifted his foot and walked towards the headquarters of the Clear Heart Society. The 10 swordsmen followed him without saying a word. There was a trace of helplessness in their eyes. In their opinion, going to the Clear Heart Society's rescue was akin to digging one's own grave. However, Zhuowen had already obtained their approval as the Villa Master. They followed their hearts and would not go against the Villa Master they had acknowledged. Therefore, this time, the 10 sword guards followed Zhuowen with a fearless attitude. Outside the Clear Heart Society's headquarters, the cultivator army of the Overlord Manor had already surrounded it. Yu Tianxiang and Di Wenxing stood in front of the cultivator army and silently looked at the huge manor before them. Brother Di, that astral weapon fragment is so important. It must be hidden in a secret place. Even if we tear down the Clear Heart Society's headquarters, we might not be able to find it, Yu Tianxiang suddenly said. Di Wenxing smiled and said, It's okay. Don't we still have Lu Yichuan? Since he's in our hands, I have a way to make him tell us the whereabouts of the astral weapon fragment. I followed you this time to fulfill my promise and help you completely destroy the Clear Heart Society. Yu Tianxiang put on a fake smile as he cupped his fists and said, Then I'll have to trouble brother Di. Di Wenxing nodded and took a step forward. His body kept growing as if he was stepping on a flight of stairs as he walked up. When Di Wenxing was dozens of meters in the air, he looked down at the Clear Heart Society's headquarters. The corner of his mouth revealed a trace of mockery as he muttered to himself, There's actually a second-stage heaven-breaking array outside the Clear Heart Society's headquarters. It's a pity that this array can't stop me. Inside the Clear Heart Society's headquarters, everyone was in a state of panic. Many hall masters had gathered together. The martial arts hall was the head of all the hall masters of the Clear Heart Society. At that moment, the martial arts hall master, Shen Wang, stood in front of everyone and said in a deep voice, Everyone, don't panic. The headquarters has a second-stage heaven-breaking array. The Overlord Manor's people won't be able to break in so easily. We can only wait for the vice president to come out now. With the vice president's strength, he shouldn't be weaker than Yu Tianxiang. Everyone nodded. Lu Yichuan had been captured by Yu Tianxiang. Now that the Clear Heart Society only had the vice president, who was a spirit transformation realm expert, left, everyone naturally placed all their hopes on the vice president. Fan Shuang sent a message. Suddenly, the Minister of Commerce, Fan Yong, excitedly took out his communication jade talisman. Under everyone's gaze, Fan Yong opened the communication jade talisman. After reading the contents of the communication jade talisman, Fan Yong was like a deflated balloon as his head drooped. Everyone's heart sank. Shen Wang quickly asked, Minister Fan, what did Miss Fan Shuang say? Fan Yong smiled bitterly and said, The Gujian Manor will stay out of this matter and will no longer interfere with the Clear Heart Society's matters. What? Everyone was shocked, and the entire place fell into despair. Damn it. That Zhuowen is our vice president. Now that the Clear Heart Society is in trouble, he actually wants to stay out of this matter. He's too shameless. To think that President Liu trusted him so much. The moment he joined, President Liu gave him the position of vice president. Everyone was in a heated discussion. They were all furious. Bang! 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 At that moment, a terrifying tremor came from outside the headquarters. Soon after, many hall masters were shocked to discover that the array surrounding the headquarters had been easily torn apart. Following that, a figure stepped through the air and arrived. This person is the governor of the Ji province who is here to preside over the Lord selection. He's a true heaven-trampling realm expert. Even if the vice president is here, he won't be a match for such an expert. Even the governor of the Ji province is standing on Yu Tianxiang's side. Our Clear Heart Society is finished. Everyone felt the terrifying aura from Di Wenxing's body and a sense of helplessness rose in their hearts. Bang! At the same time, the door of the headquarters was blasted open. Yu Tianxiang led the cultivator army into the headquarters and surrounded all the hall masters in the headquarters. Yo! Looks like all the hall masters of the Clear Heart Society have gathered. That's good too. I don't have to look for them one by one. That would be too troublesome, Yu Tianxiang said casually. Chapter 37:18. Hall Master Shen, don't be silly. You're no match for Yu Tianxiang. You'll only be throwing your life away. The other hall masters spoke up to stop Shen Wang. Shen Wang smiled bitterly and said, "Do we have any other choice now? Since I'm the leader of the Clear Heart Hall, I have the obligation to stand up. If I don't, who else will?" Everyone fell silent. You want to challenge me? Yu Tianxiang raised his eyebrows and looked at Di Wenxing. Di Wenxing said calmly, according to the rules, anyone can challenge you for the position of overlord today. Yu Tianxiang smiled cruelly and said, if that's the case, I won't hold back later. I'll kill you directly. At that moment, many cultivators who came with the cultivator army to watch the battle were gathered outside the mansion and discussing. They knew that the Clear Heart Society would be removed from Yunjin Ridge from today onwards. Fan Shuang arrived at the periphery of the crowd. When she saw that the formation and the gate of the headquarters had been broken, her expression changed drastically. She did not care about the cultivators in front of her and rushed inside with all her might. At that moment, a hand was placed on Fan Shuang's shoulder. Fan Shuang turned around and was stunned when she saw Zhuowen's face. Master Zhuo, you. Fan Shuang said with tears in her eyes. Do I need you to collect my heaven-crushing calamity? Gujian Villa also needs you to take care of it. You can't just walk away like this. Zhuowen said calmly. Master Zhuo, you'd better not go in. Di Wenxing is here too. He's a heaven-trampling transformation elite. You're no match for him. You should take this opportunity to leave Yunjin Ridge. Fan Shuang smiled bitterly. Zhuowen patted Fan Shuang's shoulder and said with a smile, a heaven-trampling transformation elite might not be able to do anything to me. With that, Zhuowen strode toward the gate of the mansion. Zhuo Wen's actions quickly attracted the attention of many onlookers in the surroundings. Who's that? The Clear Heart Society's headquarters is not peaceful now. This guy actually went in just like that. Does he have a death wish? In front of the gate, several cultivator soldiers stopped Zhuowen. Tell Yu Tianxiang that I am the new vice president of the Clear Heart Society, Zhuowen. Although his Yunjin suzerain, isn't it a little too arrogant to attack the Clear Heart Society's headquarters like this? These cultivators had strange expressions. They weren't fools and could tell that Zhuowen's aura wasn't strong. He was only at the peak of the fifth blight. On the other hand, the surrounding crowd quietened down. Everyone was sizing up Zhuo Wen with strange gazes. They had never heard that the Clear Heart Society actually had a vice president. They also found that the young man who called himself the vice president didn't have a powerful aura. He was only at the peak of the fifth blight. With such a cultivation level, how could she become the vice president of the Clear Heart Society? Was this a joke? The vice president of the Clear Heart Society? He, I'm the president of the Clear Heart Society. Little brat, if you know what's good for you, then scram. The cultivators pushed Zhuo Wen and burst into laughter. Their words were filled with insults. However, Their expressions quickly changed because Zhuowen was as immovable as a rock. Since you won't let me in, then I can only force my way in. Zhuowen's voice was cold. He threw a punch, and the powerful punch swept out like a hurricane. These cultivators were directly sent flying by this punch, and blood splattered everywhere. Then, Zhuowen directly stepped into the mansion. The 10 sword guards and Fan Shuang followed closely behind. Behind the gate, there was a large courtyard filled with cultivator soldiers. Within the cultivator army's encirclement, Zhuowen saw Shen Wang and Yu Tianxiang. At this moment, Shen Wang was fighting with Yu Tianxiang. Although it was a battle, it was actually a one-sided crushing. Shen Wang wasn't Yu Tianxiang's opponent at all. At this moment, he was seriously injured by Yu Tianxiang. He was lying on the ground and couldn't get up at all. Yu Tianxiang stepped on Shen Wang's body and said indifferently, "You also dare to fight with me with this kind of trash? Why don't you take a look at yourself in the mirror?" As he spoke, Yu Tianxiang suddenly kicked Shen Wang in the chest. Shen Wang let out a blood-curdling scream, and like a kite with a broken string, he flew back towards the door. Zhuowen jumped up and caught Shen Wang. He slowly landed not far away. Suddenly, whether it was Yu Tianxiang, the cultivator army, or the various hall masters, all of their gazes fell on Zhuowen. It's the vice president. The vice president is finally here. Unlike Yu Tianxiang, who was puzzled, the hall masters of the Clear Heart Society were all cheering as if they had welcomed their savior. Vice president. Yu Tianxiang was puzzled. Like the others, he had never heard of the Clear Heart Society having a vice president. After all, Zhuowen had only taken over as the vice president for 2 or 3 days. The Clear Heart Society didn't even have time to publicize it. It was understandable that others didn't know. After Zhuowen gave Shen Wang a healing pill, he handed him over to Fan Shuang to take care of. Today is the day of the Overlord selection. It's a big day for Yunjin territory, but I'm not interested. I've never thought of participating in the Overlord selection. But now, Yu Tianxiang, you've made me very unhappy. You actually brought the cultivator army to attack the Clear Heart Society's headquarters and disturbed my cultivation. Today, I'm going to beat you into a pile of shit. Zhuowen's voice wasn't loud, but everyone present heard it clearly. Yu Tianxiang was stunned, but then he laughed and said, "Beat me into a pile of shit? You ant, what right do you have? Just based on your peak 5th blight cultivation? I'm dying of laughter. Your Clear Heart Society is really regressing as you develop. Such trash can become the vice president and still boast shamelessly in front of me. I'm afraid there's something wrong with your brain." The cultivator army also roared with laughter along with Yu Tianxiang. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. The moment Yu Tianxiang laughed, he took a step forward. Purple snow fell around him, and he disappeared on the spot like a ghost. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Yu Tianxiang. Then, Zhuowen unceremoniously punched Yu Tianxiang's face. Bang! Yu Tianxiang flew out in an extremely sorry state and smashed into the wall on the side, causing it to collapse. The cultivator army's laughter suddenly stopped. The surroundings were terrifyingly quiet. Is it very funny? Zhuowen stood in the middle of the cultivator army's encirclement. His gaze fell on the ruins where Yu Tianxiang had fallen, and his voice was calm. Di Wenxing, who was originally leisurely leaning on the eaves and watching the show, suddenly became serious when he saw Yu Tianxiang fly out in an instant. Di Wenxing finally looked at Zhuowen seriously and revealed a smile. This child is really interesting. He's clearly only at the 5th blight, but he can display the power of someone at the peak of the divine fetal transformation stage. Yu Tianxiang was careless this time and made a fool of himself. From the moment they exchanged blows, Di Wenxing immediately saw Zhuowen's true strength. It should be around the peak of the divine fetal transformation stage. If Yu Tianxiang hadn't been careless, Zhuowen wouldn't have found a flaw and sent him flying with a punch. Bang! Chapter 37:19. Zhuowen's eyes shone with a cold light. The moment Yu Tianxiang rushed over, he also took a step forward and punched out with his right hand. Zhuowen had integrated his soul and sword intent into this punch. An extremely terrifying sword intent was brewing in his fist. Bang! When the two fists collided, Yu Tianxiang's eyes revealed a look of horror. He saw that Zhuowen's fist was burning with blazing azure lotus flames. Yu Tianxiang let out a blood-curdling scream as his right fist was directly shattered. Then, the green lotus flame wrapped around Yu Tianxiang's right hand like maggots. The blazing temperature continued to rise, burning his right arm to ashes. Yu Tianxiang did not hesitate to cut off his right arm. This azure lotus flame was too strange. It was as if it wanted to swallow his entire body. Boom! The moment Yu Tianxiang cut off his right arm, a foot suddenly stepped on his chest, ruthlessly stomping him back to the ground. Is this all the strength Yunjin Lord has? Then why are you still a lord? You should abdicate as soon as possible. Zhuowen's indifferent voice slowly rang out. It was as clear as a bell in the courtyard. In the courtyard, whether it was the cultivator army, the Clear Heart sect master, or the 10 sword guards, all of them seemed to have been petrified. They stood frozen in place, staring at this scene. Di Wenxing, who was originally leisurely leaning on the eaves, suddenly stood up and looked at Zhuowen with a serious gaze. Yu Tianxiang was recognized as the strongest cultivator in Yunjin territory. His cultivation had reached the peak of the divine fetus transformation realm. Although he had suffered serious injuries in the battle with Lu Yichuan, his strength was still not to be underestimated. But now, Yu Tianxiang had been defeated in one move by the so-called vice president of the Clear Heart sect who had suddenly appeared. Now, he was being stepped on. What made Di Wenxing feel even more incredulous was that the young man who had stepped on Yu Tianxiang had a very weak aura. He was only at the peak of the 5th blight. This kind of cultivation should have been an ant-like existence in his eyes. But now, he had easily defeated an expert like Yu Tianxiang. It can't be. This vice president is actually so strong. Shun Wang forced his eyes open and saw this scene. He was so shocked that he almost jumped up and kept rubbing his eyes. The various hall masters of the Clear Heart Society were so shocked that their jaws almost fell off. Their degree of shock was no less than Shun Wang's. On the other hand, the 10 swordsmen's eyes were shining with excitement. When Zhuowen defeated them, they knew that Zhuowen was terrifyingly strong. He was not any weaker than the first Manor Lord that they worshipped. Otherwise, they wouldn't have obeyed Zhuowen's orders like this. But now, it seemed that they had underestimated Zhuowen. Zhuowen was even stronger than they had imagined. Even a powerhouse like Yu Tianxiang was defeated in one move. Ah, you bastard, you're not at the 5th blight, you're actually hiding your cultivation. Damn bastard. Yu Tianxiang almost went crazy. He didn't expect that he would lose, and lose in such an ugly way. He mustered all of his shattered divine power in an attempt to break free from Zhuowen. Zhuowen sneered. He lifted his right foot and stomped down once again. This stomp was too terrifying. Zhuowen directly borrowed the power of his divine soul. It was like a force of 10,000 tons, and the entire courtyard shook a few times. Yu Tianxiang's chest completely caved in. He rolled his eyes in pain and spat out fresh blood. Futile struggle, Zhuowen said disdainfully. Then, he looked at Di Wenxing, who was on the eaves. You're from the Ji Prefecture Overseer who came to preside over the Overlord selection, right? Yu Tianxiang, this good-for-nothing, was beaten half to death by me. According to the rules of the Overlord selection, I should be the new Overlord of Yunjin Ridge. Zhuowen said faintly. Di Wenxing's eyes flickered, but he fell silent, which was rare. Brother Di, I didn't lose. This person used despicable means to sneak an attack on me and caused me to lose my combat power. You can't let this despicable person go, and you can't let him become the new Overlord. Kill him, kill him. Yu Tianxiang struggled to look at Di Wenxing. He lifted his head with difficulty and used all of his strength to finish this sentence. However, what he received was another stomp from Zhuowen. This time, Zhuowen didn't hold back. He directly stomped on Yu Tianxiang's face. The power of his divine soul sword intent gushed out from his right foot and blasted into the area between Yu Tianxiang's eyebrows. Zhuowen's divine soul was too powerful. After he cultivated the Green Lotus visualization chart to its peak, his divine soul had already reached the peak of the heaven-crushing third transformation. Such a powerful divine soul was enough to allow him to fight with a mid-stage or even late-stage heaven-trampling transformation expert. Yu Tianxiang's whole body twitched. Finally, his body straightened and completely stiffened. His divine soul had been completely crushed by the divine soul sword intent at that moment. The overlord is dead. The surrounding cultivator army immediately noticed the lifeless Yu Tianxiang. They were instantly thrown into chaos. They looked at Zhuowen in horror as if they had seen a ghost. Di Wenxing's eyes immediately darkened. He didn't expect that Zhuowen would be so bold, actually killing Yu Tianxiang in front of him. You actually dare to kill him? Di Wenxing's words were filled with killing intent. The weak are prey to the strong are revered. Yu Tianxiang was weaker than me. Being killed by me is a matter of course. Otherwise, the one dead would be me. Moreover, there's no such thing as stopping at a certain point in the overlord selection. I have this strength, is it wrong to kill him? Zhuowen said calmly. Di Wenxing laughed loudly and said, good, you said it very well. In this world, the weak being killed by the strong is a matter of course. But Yu Tianxiang is my old friend. You're very bold to kill him in front of me. The killing intent on Di Wenxing's body was no longer concealed. It filled the entire courtyard like a hurricane. Everyone in the Clear Heart Society felt their hearts clench. They were terrified. Di Wenxing was a heaven-trampling state elite and was sent by the Ji prefecture governor. He was no ordinary person. Master Zhuo quickly apologized to Master Di. He's from the Ji prefecture governor's side. He has a powerful background, Fan Shuang hurriedly said. The other hall leaders of the Clear Heart Society also urged Zhuowen to quickly apologize to Di Wenxing. Di Wenxing was different from Yu Tianxiang. It was fine if Yu Tianxiang was killed, but Di Wenxing was not to be offended. They're right. I'm someone you can't afford to offend. If you kneel down and apologize to me now, I might consider forgiving you. Di Wenxing looked down at Zhuowen from above, his tone full of arrogance. You're not worthy. If you want to live, you should kneel in front of me and apologize to me. That's your only way out now. Chapter 37:20. It's over. Fan Shuang's face turned as white as a sheet. After Zhuowen said those words, she knew that there was no turning back for her. The hall masters of the Clear Heart Society hung their heads low. They could imagine Zhuowen's miserable state. Although Zhuowen had shocked them by killing Yu Tianxiang in an instant, Di Wenxing was much stronger than Yu Tianxiang. They did not think that Zhuowen was a match for Di Wenxing. Di Wenxing was stunned. This was the first time he had seen such an arrogant guy. You're courting death. Di Wenxing did not want to waste any more time with Zhuowen. He jumped down from the roof and a purplish-blue broadsword appeared in his right hand. Di Wenxing, who was still in mid-air, swung the broadsword in his right hand at Zhuowen. The terrifying broadsword light swept out like a huge dragon and arrived in front of Zhuowen in an instant. Zhuowen released his spiritual soul sword intent. Wherever he pointed his sword, the sword intent was like the wind. The broadsword light was easily shattered by the spiritual soul sword intent. At this moment, Zhuowen also moved. He charged directly at Di Wenxing, who was still in mid-air. You're courting death. Di Wenxing's killing intent surged when he saw that Zhuowen did not retreat. Instead, he charged forward. He swung the broadsword in his right hand at Zhuowen. Ghost Head 9 broadswords. Di Wenxing used his strongest mystique, the Ghost Head 9 broadswords. He quickly swung the broadsword 9 times. The terrifying broadsword light turned pitch black and then turned into 9 ghost heads. The 9 ghost heads surrounded Zhuowen in an instant. They opened their mouths and spat out a thick black fog, which completely engulfed Zhuowen. The corners of Di Wenxing's mouth curled into a sneer. The moment he used this sacred art, he knew that Zhuowen was dead for sure. The Ghost Head 9 broadswords could create 9 ghost heads. When the 9 ghost heads were combined, they formed a terrifying barrier. Within the barrier, there were many strange broadsword shadows. Each of the broadsword shadows was extremely sharp and powerful. Any cultivator within the barrier would be smashed into pieces by the broadsword shadows. There was no chance of survival. Bang bang bang. But soon, Di Wenxing's expression changed. He discovered that the 9 ghost heads were exploding one after another. When the 9th ghost head exploded, a figure flew out like a god. He was surrounded by 9 divine swords, each of which was burning with terrifying green lotus flames. Dai Zhuowen's voice was very calm. The moment he neared Di Wenxing, 9 spirit sword intents blasted Di Wenxing's body at the same time. Di Wenxing quickly brandished his saber to defend against the attacks of the soul sword intent. But he soon discovered in despair that the power of the sword intent of the soul was much stronger than he had imagined. His saber shattered, and his body was pierced through by the 9 soul sword intents, exploding into a bloody mist in midair. He couldn't be any more dead. After killing Di Wenxing, the 9 spirit sword intents entered the space between his eyebrows, while Zhuowen slowly landed in the courtyard. The courtyard was terrifyingly quiet. One could even hear a pin drop. After a long while, the hall masters of the Clear Heart Society all knelt down and shouted, "Long live the Vice President." The 10 swordsmen prostrated themselves in admiration. They knelt on the ground and shouted the Manor Lord's name. The cultivators looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They also knelt down and bowed to Zhuowen. Zhuowen had used his strength to prove himself, and today was the day of the suzerain selection. Therefore, Zhuowen was already fully deserving of the title of the new suzerain. Zhuowen stood in the middle of the courtyard and looked around at the people who were kneeling and bowing to him. He sighed in his heart. In the 100 outer territories, strength was the only thing that mattered. As long as you were strong enough, you would be able to obtain all the respect and resources. In this place, the strong were always strong, and the weak were always weak. If you didn't want to be eliminated, then you had to constantly become stronger. Only by becoming strong enough could you have a foothold in this vast world. No way. Di Wenxing and Yu Tianxiang were both killed. Was it done by the young man who just went in? Damn, is this guy really at the 5th blight? How can he be so strong? This strength is a little unimaginable. The cultivators who were watching outside all entered the courtyard. They witnessed the scene of Di Wenxing being destroyed by the soul sword intent. They also saw the Clear Heart Society and the cultivators reaching an agreement to kneel and bow to Zhuowen. At this moment, they were also affected. Their discussions stopped and they involuntarily knelt down. They looked at Zhuowen with eyes full of curiosity and awe. From now on, I am the Yunjin suzerain. In Yunjin territory, I have the final say in everything. I am the rule of Yunjin territory. Also, tear down the original suzerain's manor and banish all of Yu Tianxiang's clansmen. In the future, the Gujian villa where I live will be the suzerain's manor. After Zhuowen finished speaking calmly, he led the 10 swordsmen and Fan Shuang past everyone and left the courtyard. After Zhuowen left, everyone in the courtyard heaved a sigh of relief. The pressure that Zhuowen gave them was too great. Experts like Yu Tianxiang and Di Wenxing were easily dealt with by this person. How could they dare to offend such an expert? With the help of others, Shun Wang reluctantly came to the cultivator army's leader and asked in a deep voice, "Where is our President Lu now?" The cultivator army's leader was a rather young man. He replied, "Hall Master Shun, don't worry. President Lu is not safe now. He is still in the suzerain's manor." Now that the Yunjin suzerain had been replaced and Yu Tianxiang was dead, there was no need for the cultivator army of the suzerain's manor to keep Lu Yi locked up. Shun Wang nodded and said in a deep voice, "Take us there quickly." The cultivator army's leader was straightforward. He led the cultivator army, Shun Wang, and the others to the suzerain's manor. Although the cultivator army's leader's status was higher than Shun Wang's, he knew very well that the new suzerain was the vice president of the Clear Heart Society and had an unusual relationship with the Clear Heart Society. Now, he had to build a good relationship with the Clear Heart Society. Otherwise, he might suffer in the future. This was also the reason why he was so cooperative. "Lord Shuo, you killed Di Wenxing. I'm afraid there will be trouble. Di Wenxing is from the Murong family, one of the 4 great families of the Ji province." Fan Shuang followed closely behind Zhuowen and said worriedly, "It's fine. Di Wenxing was the one who targeted me first." If the Murong family really comes, I will record today's scene and show it to the Murong family when the time comes. Zhuowen did not mind. He knew very well that his strength was much stronger than Di Wenxing's. When the Murong family found out, they would most likely not kill him but rope him in. At least until the Murong family found out about this and came to Yunjin territory, Zhuowen would be very safe. Fan Shuang, I will have to trouble you with the trivial matters of the suzerain's manor. Also, prepare the things I need to pass the tribulation as soon as possible. I need to break through as soon as possible. Zhuowen realized that he had stayed in the fifth decay for too long. This time, if he could successfully pass the heaven-crushing tribulation, with his accumulation during this period, he would directly advance to the late stage of the divine transformation stage. Moreover, after the heaven-crushing tribulation, he would be able to truly cultivate the primordial technique. Chapter 37:21. The Cultivator Army led the Hall Masters of the Clear Heart Society into the Overlord's mansion and arrested everyone from the Yu family. Guild Master Lu is in that room. Go in and release Guild Master Lu. I still have to follow Lord Zhuo's orders to capture Yu Tianxiang and tear down the Overlord's mansion. The leader of the Cultivator Army pointed at a house in front of them. After explaining to Shen Wang and the others, he led the Cultivator Army into the Overlord's mansion and began to arrest the rest of Yu Tianxiang's followers. After Shen Wang and the others broke into the house, they found Lu Yichuan tied to a tree in the yard. Lu Yichuan also noticed Shen Wang and the others and was overjoyed. However, he was too weak and could not speak coherently. Shen Wang and the others quickly untied Lu Yichuan and took out healing pills for him to consume. After a while, Lu Yichuan's face began to redden. Shen Wang, how did you get into the Overlord's mansion? Were you also captured by Yu Tianxiang? Lu Yichuan looked at them in confusion. Shen Wang and the others looked at each other. Finally, Shen Wang smiled bitterly and said, Guild Master Lu, Yu Tianxiang is dead. The Overlord of Yunjin Hill has changed hands. What? Yu Tianxiang is dead. Who killed him? Lu Yichuan was shocked. Lu Yichuan had personally fought Yu Tianxiang and knew how terrifying the latter was. It could be said that Yu Tianxiang's strength was very close to that of a heaven-trampling change realm elite. There was actually an elite in Yunjin Hill who could kill Yu Tianxiang. It was the Vice President. Shen Wang said in awe. Vice President? Are you talking about Zhuowen? Lu Yichuan's eyes narrowed and he could not help but cry out. Yes, it was Lord Zhuo. Yu Tianxiang was killed by Lord Zhuo in one hit. Shen Wang's voice became more and more respectful. Killed in one hit. Lu Yichuan's eyes widened and his eyeballs almost popped out. Yu Tianxiang was so powerful, but he was killed by Zhuowen in one hit. This world was crazy. Was Di Wenxing the one who gave Zhuowen the overlord position of Yunjin Hill? Lu Yichuan thought of something and asked Shen Wang. Shen Wang touched his nose and smiled bitterly. Di Wenxing was also killed by Lord Zhuo. He's so powerful that he doesn't need to be conferred the title of Overlord of Yunjin. Lu Yichuan was numb. After a long time, he said bitterly, I was wrong this time. Zhuowen is so powerful. Who is he? 3 days later, the Lord's mansion was completely demolished, and Yu Tianxiang's remaining forces were basically exiled. The Cultivator Army's army leader led the Cultivator Army led Army Cultivators Army's Army manner. From then on, the Overlord's Overlord. SSSSSS. Fan Shuang walked over and knelt in front of Zhuowen. She said respectfully, Master Zhuo, everything for the heavenly tribulation has been prepared. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. Thank you for your hard work. Ask your men to bring everything to my room. Fan Shuang hesitated. Lord Zhuo, the Clear Heart Society is in charge of the heavenly tribulations. They are still in the Clear Heart Society's headquarters. What happened? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and asked. President Lu wants to see you. That's why he kept the heavenly tribulations items. Fan Shuang said hesitantly. If he wants to see me, he can just come to the Overlord's Overlord. Why did he keep the items for my heavenly tribulations? Zhuowen's eyes flashed coldly. Fan Shuang's eyes flickered. After a moment of silence, She continued, President Liu has been working hard to become the overlord of Yunjin Hill for so many years. Lord Shuo, you've become the overlord. Maybe he's upset. Zhuowen sneered. If that's the case, I'll go to the Clear Heart Society's headquarters. Fan Shuang, inform the 10 swordsmen to follow me to the Clear Heart Society. Fan Shuang's heart skipped a beat. She braced herself and nodded. Soon, Zhuowen led the 10 swordsmen and Fan Shuang into the Clear Heart Society's headquarters. The Clear Heart Society's guards recognized Zhuowen. Hence, they did not dare to stop Zhuowen. President Liu, come out and see me. Zhuowen came to the courtyard of the Clear Heart Society's headquarters. His voice reverberated throughout the entire Clear Heart Society. After a while, Lu Yichuan led Shen Wang and a few other hall leaders of the Clear Heart Society out with a smile. Lord Shuo, you've arrived. Forgive me for not going out to meet you, Lu Yichuan said with a smile. Lu Yichuan, I'm very patient. I'll give you 15 minutes. Bring out the items for the heavenly tribulations immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for turning my back on you. Zhuowen's eyes were burning with murderous intent. He did not give Lu Yichuan any face. He had been preparing for the heavenly tribulations for so many days. At this moment, Lu Yichuan actually played such a trick on him. Zhuowen could not help but feel a little angry. Lu Yichuan sensed the terrifying murderous intent. His expression changed slightly. However, he quickly regained his composure and said in a low voice, Lord Shuo, don't forget that I'm the one who promoted you to be the vice president of the Clear Heart Society. The items for the heavenly tribulations are the resources of the Clear Heart Society. Although you're powerful, you shouldn't be so unreasonable. Zhuowen's expression darkened. He said, then what do you want? Lu Yichuan smiled and said, Lord Shuo, this is very simple. As long as you pass the position of the Lord to me, all the resources of the Clear Heart Society will be yours. Fan Shuang's expression changed drastically. She said in a low voice, President Liu, your request is too much. Back then, you were defeated by Yu Tianxiang and were captured alive. Your fate is unknown. If Lord Shuo had not defeated Yu Tianxiang, would you still be alive? Now, not only are you not grateful, you even want Lord Shuo to give up the position of the Lord. What right do you have? Lu Yichuan looked coldly at Fan Shuang and continued, Lord Shuo, I don't mean anything else. I can see that you don't care about the position of the Lord. As long as you give up the position of the Lord to me, everything can be discussed. I will do my best to fulfill all your request. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. He stared at Lu Yichuan and said calmly, you want me to give up the position? Lu Yichuan felt a chill down his spine when he saw Zhuowen's gaze. He took a deep breath and bowed deeply. He said, this is what I've been pursuing for so many years. It's also the goal that I've been working hard for all these years. I hope that Lord Shuo can fulfill my wish. Just as Lu Yichuan finished speaking, a terrifying aura blasted toward him. Lu Yichuan groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. He flew out in a sorry state and crashed heavily onto the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood. President Shen Wang and the other hall masters quickly helped Lu Yichuan up. They looked at Zhuowen in horror. Chapter 37-22. Lu Yichuan stood up reluctantly. His eyes flashed with hatred as he said to Shen Wang, give Lord Shuo's item to him. Shen Wang nodded and threw a spiritual ring to Fan Shuang. Fan Shuang checked it and nodded to Zhuowen. Lu Yichuan, don't do it again. Don't think that I'm patient. If you dare to threaten me with something in front of me again, I won't be merciful. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he left with Fan Shuang and the 10 swordsmen. President, are you okay? Shen Wang and the rest asked nervously. Lu Yichuan's eyes were full of hatred. He said in a low voice, I didn't expect Zhuowen to come after Yu Tianxiang left. I've raised an ingrate. Zhuowen really doesn't know what's good for him. Shen Wang sighed and said, President Liu, Zhuowen is too strong. He's stronger than Yu Tianxiang and Di Wenxing. Moreover, we don't have any conflict of interest with him. There's no need to strain our relationship. Lu Yichuan said coldly, I can still challenge Zhuowen. That thing is about to be completed. Once that thing is completed, my strength will reach an unprecedented level. Originally, I planned to use that thing to deal with Yu Tianxiang. I didn't expect to use it on Zhuowen this time. Shun Wang's expression changed drastically. He said in a low voice, "President, that thing you're talking about isn't the fire toad, right?" Lu Yichuan nodded and said, "That's the ultimate secret of our Clear Heart Society. I've figured it out now. Why did Di Wenxing suddenly attack me? He's probably after the fire toad. Now that Di Wenxing and Yu Tianxiang have been killed by Zhuowen, no one will know about this. That Zhuowen won't know either. This is my only chance." Shun Wang sighed and didn't try to persuade Lu Yichuan. He knew very well that Lu Yichuan's insistence on becoming the lord of Yunjin territory wasn't because of greed or vanity. Everything he did was because of a promise. It was because of this agreement that Lu Yichuan had to carry a heavy burden and stagger forward. Shun Wang had watched Lu Yichuan walk all the way here, so he was most aware of the pain and suffering Lu Yichuan had gone through. "Guild Master, we understand your persistence. As for the fire toad, all the brothers in our guild will contribute. We will not let you take on this alone," Shun Wang suddenly said. Lu Yichuan looked at Shun Wang, his eyes suddenly wet. He said in a low voice, "Shun Wang, thank you for always supporting me, and the brothers in the guild who never left me." Shun Wang smiled brightly and said, "What's wrong with that? We established the Clear Heart Society when we had nothing. From the very beginning, we were of one mind with you, President." Zhuowen spent 3 days in the Gujian villa to adjust his condition before leaving Yunjin City. When he left the main city this time, he did not tell anyone. The heaven-crushing tribulation was too important to him. He had just arrived in Yunjin City not long ago, so he did not have any foundation and did not trust anyone completely. Even the 10 sword guards, he did not fully trust them. As such, he didn't reveal anything about the heaven-crushing tribulation. After he was far enough away from the main city, Zhuowen landed in a remote canyon. This canyon was very large. It stretched out for thousands of miles, and the sides were dozens of miles wide. Zhuowen summoned the Thunder Fire Sword, Death Sacrifice Sword and Blood Immortal Sword from the macro world. Ever since these 3 divine swords entered the 100 domains, their cultivation progress had been much faster. Especially Xiao Hei, whose cultivation was close to Zhuowen's, had already reached the 5th heaven's decay. Although the Death Sacrifice Sword and Blood Immortal Sword were slightly weaker, they also had the cultivation of the 3rd heaven's decay. Zhuowen handed several array discs to Xiao Hei and warned, "Xiao Hei, I'm about to undergo the tribulation. This tribulation will be very terrifying. I'm afraid of attracting attention. Place this concealment array outside the canyon and try to hide my tribulation. Also, protect me. If anyone comes, inform me in advance so that I can be prepared." Xiao Hei took the array discs and solemnly agreed. Then, she left the canyon with the Death Sacrifice Sword and Blood Immortal Sword. Zhuowen stood in the middle of the canyon and took out piles of items for the tribulation from his spirit ring. These were all items that Fan Shuang had collected for him. Because he knew that his tribulation would be extraordinary, he had asked Fan Shuang to collect a lot of items. "Let's begin." Zhuowen no longer suppressed his aura. In an instant, he broke through the peak of the 5th heaven's decay and stepped into the divine transformation stage. At this moment, the clouds in the sky changed. Under Zhuowen's shocked gaze, black holes appeared one after another. There were a total of 3 black holes floating in the sky. Within each black hole, there was an extremely terrifying tribulation aura brewing. Zhuowen's body tensed up as he completely mobilized the shattered divine power in his body. He could feel that this tribulation would be even more terrifying than his 5th heaven's decay tribulation. He could not be too careless. As Zhuowen began to transcend the tribulation, a man and a woman appeared outside the gates of Yunjin City. They were a white-haired old man and a beautiful young woman. "I didn't expect Yunjin City to be so far away from Tsangyun Forest. It took us 7 or 8 months to get here on foot." The young woman looked at the huge city gates in front of her and said excitedly. The old man was also moved. He sighed and said, "Tsangyun Forest is considered the border of Yunjin City. It's a long journey. If we can take the divine ship and the teleportation arrays in the villages, We can reach Yunjin City in less than a month. The young woman curled her lips and said, whether it's the teleportation array or the divine ship, it's too expensive. We can't afford it. If Zhuowen was here, he would not be unfamiliar with the old man and the young woman. These two people were pharmacist Lu and Lu Miaozhen. They were also Zhuowen's benefactors who saved him when he first entered the bounded domain. The two of them were not as lucky as Zhuowen. As soon as they left Songyun Forest, they could meet caravans and guards who could take the divine ship for free. The two of them walked from Songyun Forest to Yunjin City Lord's residence. After all, they did not have many boundary stones on them and did not have extra money to use the teleportation array or take the divine ship. Therefore, although the two of them left Songyun Forest more than half a year earlier than Zhuowen, they arrived at Yunjin City a few days later than Zhuowen. The lord of Yunjin City should still be Yu Tianxiang. Although there is a lord selection recently, with Yu Tianxiang's strength, he should be able to keep the lord position. Pharmacist Lu said with a smile. The two of you are outsiders, right? The lord of Yunjin City is no longer Yu Tianxiang. A man passing by could not help but interrupt when he heard Pharmacist Lu's words. Pharmacist Lu asked curiously, not Yu Tianxiang? Could it be that it has been replaced by Lu Yichuan, the president of the Clear Heart Society? Pharmacist Lu had some understanding of the forces in Yunjin City. He knew that Lu Yichuan was very strong and was a strong competitor for the position of Yunjin City Lord. Since Yu Tianxiang was no longer the Lord, it could only be Lu Yichuan. It's not Lu Yichuan either. It's a guy who suddenly popped out. I think his name is Zhuowen. The man said. What? Zhuowen? Pharmacist Lu and Lu Miaozhen's jaws dropped in surprise. Chapter 37-23. Hey, do you know Lord Shuo? A man passing by asked in surprise when he saw the expressions on Apothecary Lu and Lu Miaozhen's faces. Apothecary Lu waved his hand and said, I don't think so. However, I have an old friend with the same name. However, his strength is very weak, so he probably has the same name. The man passing by nodded and didn't think much of it. After bidding farewell to the two, he entered the main city. Grandfather, could Lord Shuo really be Big Brother Shuo? Lu Miaozhen asked uncertainly. Apothecary Lu shook his head and said, although I don't know Zhuowen's exact cultivation, I can sense that he doesn't have the cultivation of Heaven Breaker. With his strength, it's impossible for him to become Yunjin Overlord. Moreover, he suffered such serious injuries. He would have to recuperate in the Yuan tribe for at least a few months. It's impossible for him to reach Yunjin Ridge before us. Lu Miaozhen nodded and changed the topic. Grandfather, do you think the Ascension sect will really recruit disciples in Yunjin Ridge? Apothecary Lu smiled and said, yes, your grandfather has been traveling between Yunjin Ridge and Ash Cloud Forest all these years. In the Ji Prefecture, the 5 sects will come to the various territories under the Ji Prefecture to recruit talented disciples every 10 years. Miaozhen, with your Taoist root, it's more than enough for you to join the Ascension sect, which has the strongest foundation among the 5 sect. Lu Miaozhen's beautiful eyes dimmed and said, Grandfather, if I join the Ascension sect, can you join the sect with me? Apothecary Lu smiled and stroked Lu Miaozhen's beautiful hair and said, Grandfather is already so old, so I can't go. However, Miaozhen, you must remember that Grandfather will leave you one day. You must learn to constantly strive for self-improvement, understand? Lu Miaozhen's eyes revealed a resolute light as she nodded heavily. Rumble. Suddenly, an ear-piercing sound of muffled thunder came from dozens of miles away from the main city. Lu Miaozhen, Apothecary Lu, and the crowd at the city gate couldn't help but raise their heads. They saw a huge flying fish that was over 10,000 feet long falling from the sky. The flying fish's aura was extremely terrifying. Its entire body was covered in blazing lightning that crackled incessantly. It was extremely ear-piercing. 4 figures stood on the flying fish's back. The leader was a young man with a slightly pale face. 2 beautiful women with graceful figures stuck to the young man's body. Their breaths were like orchids, and they were extremely seductive. Behind the 3 of them stood a man in a black robe and a hood. However, because of the hood, the man's face was covered, and his appearance could not be seen clearly. After the flying fish landed on the ground, everyone at the city gate involuntarily retreated to the sides and opened up a path. Most of them were cultivators who weren't very strong or mortals with power and status. Although the 4 of them did not display powerful auras, merely the flying fish that they controlled were extraordinary. They were much more powerful than the 4 of them. It could be seen that these 4 people were not ordinary people. This is the main city of Yunjin. Is this where Di Wenxing disappeared? The pale-faced young man spoke in an indifferent tone as he held the women in his arms. Soon after, he sized up the huge city gate in front of him. That's right, Di Wenxing is here on young master's orders to search for that thing. Since he suddenly disappeared without a trace, it seems that the mission has failed, the black-robed man said in a deep voice. Humph. It seems that the Mingxian society has some skills. Since he can get rid of Di Wenxing, it means that the Mingxian society has already mastered the fire toad? The young man's face darkened. The black-robed man nodded and said, it should be so. The fire toad that the Mingxian society has mastered is extremely damaged, and only a small part of it is left. However, if they can really awaken the power of the fragments of the fire toad, eliminating Di Wenxing will be a piece of cake. The young man said calmly, however, with you here, even if they can unleash the power of the fire toad, so what? After all, it is only a very damaged and powerful star weapon. Its power is at most equivalent to a heaven-breaking level 3 divine weapon. The black-robed man nodded and said, young master is right. This subordinate will do his best and will not let you down. The young man nodded and indifferently glanced at the trembling crowd at the city gate. A trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. When his gaze fell on Lu Miaozhen, it suddenly stopped. He carefully sized up Lu Miaozhen, and his eyes revealed a look of ecstasy. This woman, the water aura on her body is very dense. This is the spiritual water root. The young man suddenly said excitedly. What? It's actually the spiritual water root? This is a supreme-grade Dao root that's hard to come by in 100 years. It's the best material for a cultivation furnace. Young master, you're truly blessed to have encountered such a supreme-grade item. The black-robed man also noticed the dense water aura on Lu Miaozhen's body, and he hurriedly congratulated the young man. Stop being so wishy-washy. Quickly make a move and capture this woman for me. With this woman, this young master's cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. Let's see who in the Murong clan dares to say that my natural talent is inferior to my big brother's. The young man laughed excitedly. The black-robed man nodded and took a step forward to flash towards Lu Miaozhen. When Lu Miaozhen noticed that the young man was sizing her up, she felt that something was off. Now, when she saw the black-robed man actually directly flash towards her, her beautiful eyes revealed a look of terror. She truly couldn't figure out why a lofty heaven-breaking expert like the young man would make a move against her. Miaozhen, quickly flee into the main city. Alchemist Lu withdrew a formation disc from his pocket and suddenly threw it out. Then, he pulled Lu Miaozhen and charged into the main city. The black-robed man casually waved his hand. He didn't care about the formation disc that Alchemist Lu threw out. In his eyes, Alchemist Lu was merely an ant-like mortal. How powerful could his formation disc be? However, he soon discovered that the formation disc had just touched him when it immediately self-destructed. And his figure also paused at this moment. It was precisely because of this that Alchemist Lu and Lu Miaozhen had already fled into the main city. Damn it! I was actually tricked by a mortal. The black-robed man's eyes were gloomy as he quickly chased into the city gates. Not long after, he came out of the city gates again with a gloomy expression. Where are they? The young man asked with a frown when he saw the black-robed man come out empty-handed. The black-robed man lowered his head and said, Young master, although that old man is a mortal, he has some tricks up his sleeve. After they entered the main city, I actually couldn't sense their auras anymore. The young man's face was gloomy. He walked up and slapped the black-robed man. He said coldly, Trash, you can even lose track of a mortal. The black-robed man covered his face, not daring to refute. This time, it was indeed his responsibility. Set up this confinement formation in Yunjin Hill. From now on, the people in Yunjin Hill won't be able to take a single step out of the main city, whether it's the Clear Heart Society's fire toad or that woman with the spirit water root. I want them both, the young man said coldly. Chapter 37-24. A strong wave of array Dao spread out around the main city. Instantly, the main city was surrounded by a strong wave of array Dao, forming an impenetrable barrier. When the array Dao was formed, all the cultivators in the main city seemed to have sensed it. They raised their heads and looked above the main city. Their eyes were filled with uncertainty. In the Gujian villa, the 10 sword guards, who were cultivating in the courtyard, opened their eyes. They looked above the main city and their expressions changed. Big brother, there is a strong wave of array Dao around the main city. Someone has set up an unknown array Dao outside the main city, 10 Sword said with a frown. 1 Sword looked serious and said, "What is going on?" Someone dares to set up an array Dao around the main city in Yunjin City. Who is so bold? At that moment, the leader of the cultivator army rushed in from the outside. 1 Sword, where is the Grand Lord? Someone has set up an imprisonment array outside the main city. They are trying to imprison everyone in the main city, the leader of the cultivator army said with a panicked expression. Do you know who did it? 1 Sword asked angrily. There are 4 people. We don't know who they are yet. They are heading towards the Gujian villa. The leader of the cultivator army said in a low voice. Let's go. Let's report to the Grand Lord. 1 Sword stood up and led the few of them to Zhuowen's room. However, there was no reply after knocking on the door many times. The Grand Lord is not in the main city now. He went out early in the morning. What happened? Fan Shuang walked in from the corridor and asked 1 Sword and the rest. 1 Sword and the rest's eyes lit up. They had already guessed where Zhuowen had gone. Thus, 1 Sword told Fan Shuang everything that had happened in the main city. What? Who are those 4 people? How dare they do such a bold thing? Fan Shuang's face changed. He, bold? Our young master is the son of the Murong family. With his status, even if he killed everyone in Yunjin City, he would still be forgiven. But you guys are the ones who have the guts to make such a big fuss. Fan Shuang and the others couldn't help but look over. They saw a small boat floating above the Gujian villa. 4 figures stood on the divine ship. The one who spoke was the black-robed man. Murong family? Fan Shuang and the 10 swordsmen were shocked. They were no strangers to the Murong family. After all, they were one of the 4 great families of the Ji province's prefecture overseer. After all, the Murong family was in charge of dozens of territories like Yunjin Hill. Given the power of the Murong family, it would be a piece of cake for them to destroy Yunjin Hill. Young Master Murong, we didn't know that you'd come from afar, we've neglected you. I wonder why young Master Murong has come to Yunjin Hill this time? If there's anything the Overlord's residents can do to help, we'll do it without hesitation. Fan Shuang reacted quickly. She immediately changed her attitude and said humbly. The young man hugged the beautiful maidservant with both hands and said indifferently, I really do have something to ask of the Grand Lord's mansion. As he spoke, the youth tossed a crystal ball to Fan Shuang. Mobilize the forces of the Overlord's mansion and capture the woman in the crystal ball. Once we capture her, I'll immediately remove the imprisonment array outside the main city, the youth said indifferently. Fan Shuang took the crystal ball and saw Lu Miaozhen's face in it. Young Master Murong, don't worry. We'll capture this woman as soon as possible. Although Fan Shuang did not know what the relationship between this woman and the youth was, she knew that she could not reject young Master Murong. Otherwise, the Overlord's residence would be finished. She could feel that the black-robed man's aura was very powerful. He was much more powerful than Di Wenxing. All right. Once we capture this woman, use the crystal ball to contact me. After the youth finished speaking, the divine ship disappeared from the sky above the villa. Why did the Murong family suddenly come to Yunjin Hill? 1 Sword asked in confusion. Fan Shuang shook her head. She was also confused. Yunjin Hill was such a small place. Why would the Murong family be interested in it? She could not figure it out. After the divine ship left Gujian Hill, it headed straight for the Clear Heart Society's headquarters. In a secret chamber in the Clear Heart Society's headquarters, Lu Yichuan sat cross-legged. A small fragment the size of a fingernail was floating in front of him. The fragment emitted a blazing flame aura. The temperature of the aura was extremely high and it kept rising. Finally, it took the form of a toad. The toad was burning with flames. When it opened its mouth, it spat out an endless sea of fire. When it closed its mouth, the sea of fire was completely devoured. The fire toad suddenly turned into a ray of fire and entered Lu Yichuan's right arm, forming a pattern of a fire toad. However, the pattern was very illusory and could not be seen clearly. Lu Yichuan suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were shining with excitement. He could not help but laugh. I've finally merged with the power of the fire toad. With the fire toad, Zhuoan is no match for me. When Lu Yichuan walked out of the secret chamber, he saw hundreds of cultivators of the Clear Heart Society sitting cross-legged in the huge courtyard outside the secret chamber. Shun Wang was sitting at the front. However, these hundreds of people were all pale, and their lips were cracked. They looked very weak. Lu Yichuan knelt down in front of them and said, "Everyone, thank you for sharing your blood essence to help me nourish the fire toad. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to successfully activate the power of the fire toad. All of you are my benefactors." Shun Wang stood up with difficulty and helped Lu Yichuan up. "President, you're too polite. You being able to control the power of the fire toad is beneficial to our Clear Heart Society. Our Clear Heart Society's prosperity is all on you, President." Lu Yichuan cried tears of joy. He had spent too much time for this day. In the end, the heavens did not let down those who worked hard. He succeeded. Boom, boom, boom. Right at this moment, a terrifying sound came from the headquarters of the Clear Heart Society. "Lu Yichuan, get out here." Along with the sound of the tremors was a loud shout. Lu Yichuan frowned slightly and looked up. He saw that a divine ship had appeared in the sky above the Clear Heart Society. A black-robed man stood at the bow of the divine ship. He casually threw out attacks that landed on the Clear Heart Society's headquarters and caused great damage. Lu Yichuan was furious. After asking Shun Wang and the others to hide in the secret chamber, he leaped to the top of the Clear Heart Society's tallest tower and said coldly, "I'm Lu Yichuan. Why are you behaving atrociously in my Clear Heart Society?" The black-robed man stopped attacking and looked at Lu Yichuan at the top of the tower. He grinned and said, "So you're Lu Yichuan. We're from the Murong family. Hand over the fire toad. We'll leave your corpse intact." Lu Yichuan's pupils shrank. He did not expect the Murong family to come looking for him. They were one of the 4 major families of Ji province. Their power was far from what Yunjin Hill could compare to. "I don't know what the fire toad you're talking about is. You've got the wrong person," Lu Yichuan said in a low voice. The black-robed man grinned and took a step forward. He clenched his right hand into a fist and blasted it toward Lu Yichuan. A heaven-trampling change elite. Lu Yichuan's expression changed drastically. The black-robed man's attack put too much pressure on him. He had no choice but to use the power of the fire toad. In an instant, the blazing flames formed a continuously rotating earth fire shield in front of him. Bang! The black-robed man's fist landed on the fire shield. It paused for a moment before the fire shield shattered. However, the black-robed man was forced to take a few steps back in the air. Chapter 37-25. In the depths of the canyon, a charred figure fell from the sky and crashed heavily into the ground. The terrifying force of the collision caused the entire canyon to tremble violently. The charred figure smashed into the bottom of the canyon, forming a huge crater that was several hundred feet deep. Whoosh! Whoosh! Xiao Hei, with the blood immortal sword and the sacrificial death sword, hurried over from the edge of the canyon. When she saw the deep pit below the canyon, her expression changed greatly. Holy **T. This brat's heaven-crushing tribulation is way too terrifying. He'll be fine, right? Xiao Hei quickly rushed into the hole. Not long after, Xiao He dragged out a charred human figure from the depths of the pit. "Boss, is Master dead?" The blood fairy sword cautiously approached and touched Zhuowen's body with its hilt, but Zhuowen remained unmoved. "You jinx! What are you talking about?" Xiao He raised her little claw and slapped the blood immortal sword, causing it to cry out. She then looked at Zhuowen with a serious expression. At this moment, Zhuowen's aura was so weak that it was almost undetectable. However, Xiao He was mentally connected to Zhuowen. He could sense that Zhuowen was still alive. Suddenly, the charred human figure opened its eyes, and a bright light burst out from its eyes. Then, he sat down cross-legged, and the aura on his body continued to rise. "Looks like he's fine," Xiao He asked the blood immortal sword and the sacrificial death sword to stay away from Zhuowen. She stood aside and quietly watched Zhuowen cultivate. Zhuowen's aura became increasingly vast. When he crossed tribulation, he had already broken through to the early divine transformation realm. But now, his aura was still growing, and it was growing at an extremely fast speed. Early stage divine transformation realm, middle stage divine transformation realm, late stage divine transformation realm. Only when he reached the peak of the divine fetus transformation realm did Zhuowen's rising aura slow down and completely disappear. He had overcome the heaven-crushing tribulation with great difficulty, and he had even broken through to the peak stage of the divine fetal transformation stage. However, Zhuowen did not get up. Instead, he continued to cultivate. In his soul, the Tai word stone was boiling. Mysterious and powerful characters were constantly pouring into his mind, allowing him to absorb and digest them. That's right, these were the cultivation techniques of the primordial grand mist technique. The primordial technique had a very high threshold. One could only cultivate it after breaking through the heavens. Moreover, it was also extremely profound. But for Zhuowen, who had a high comprehension ability, comprehending the primordial grand mist technique wasn't difficult. Not to mention, he had already studied the primordial grand mist technique countless times. In addition, he had the foundation of his self-created primordial mantra. Therefore, the effect of temporarily cultivating the primordial grand mist technique was surprisingly good. Xiao He noticed that purple energy was beginning to surge around Zhuowen. This purple energy was no longer the purple mist of the past, but a kind of energy similar to purple waves. This energy was far more powerful than the purple mist formed by cultivating the primordial grand mist technique. Moreover, the shattered divine power in Zhuowen's body also underwent a transformation at this moment. It became even more powerful and resilient. 2 hours later, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. His pupils had become a deep purple color. When Zhuowen stood up, a purple ripple visible to the naked eye spread out in all directions with him as the center. Wherever the purple ripples passed, the ground cracked and shattered. Dense cracks appeared in the surrounding canyons. Holy **T, what kind of power is this? Let's get away from it. Xiao He's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he saw the purple wave. He could sense a strong aura of death from this purple wave. He had no doubt that if he accidentally came into contact with this purple wave, he would definitely die. Boom, boom, boom. Instantly, the huge canyon collapsed under the pulsation of the purple ripples and was razed to the ground. This brat Zhuowen is too reckless. He didn't control his power and is now buried alive. Xiao He looked at the collapsed canyon with a worried expression. Zhuowen was still in the canyon. Now that the canyon had collapsed, Zhuowen was also buried inside. Boom. Just as Xiao He was worrying, a large hole appeared in the canyon ruins. Then, a figure flew out from the hole and landed lightly not far from the canyon ruins. Brat, are you really only at the divine fetal transformation stage? Aren't you a little too strong? Xiao He hurriedly moved closer. He wanted to know what was going on. Zhuowen clenched his fists. His heart was filled with excitement. He had finally successfully crushed the heavens. Moreover, he had also completely comprehended the immemorial primordial chaos technique at the same time. He could sense the powerful destructive power of this power. Although he was only at the pinnacle of the divine fetal transformation stage, he knew that in terms of pure power, he was no weaker than a cultivator at the pinnacle of the heaven-trampling transformation stage. If he used his divine sense and other trump cards, he might even be able to battle a cultivator at the void god transformation stage. That's right. I'm already at the pinnacle of the divine fetal transformation stage. My power far surpasses that of the divine fetal transformation stage and the spirit transformation stage, Zhuoan said to Xiao He with a smile. What a freak. You've only just crushed the heavens, and you already have such terrifying power. You're also a freak of nature in the 100 realms, Xiao He muttered. All right, it's time for us to return to the main city. Zhuoan smiled as he took out a new set of clothes from the great world. After putting them on, he summoned Xiao He, the blood immortal sword, and the death sacrifice sword back into the great world. Then, he took out a divine ship and quickly flew toward the main city. You must be the one who killed Di Wunxing. You're only at the pinnacle of the spirit transformation stage. After fusing with the fire toad's power, you should be able to reach the mid-stage or late stage of the heaven-trampling transformation stage. It's not difficult to kill Di Wunxing, the black-robed man sneered. The killing intent in his eyes was no longer concealed. Lu Yichuan's expression changed slightly. Di Wunxing is from the Murong family? So you don't know? That's right. Di Wunxing was sent by my young master. I thought that with Di Wunxing's strength, it would be easy for him to obtain the fire toad. I didn't expect him to die in Yunjin Hill. What a piece of trash. Now, I'll give you a chance. Hand over the fire toad and kill yourself. I'll leave your corpse intact. The black-robed man said indifferently. Lu Yichuan's expression darkened, but he laughed loudly. You're too confident. In my opinion, you might not be a match for me. After saying that, Lu Yichuan stomped his right foot and shot toward the black-robed man like a meteor. You really don't know what's good for you. The black-robed man sneered. His right hand turned into a claw and surged with strange black thunderbolts. The moment Lu Yichuan arrived, his right hand turned into a claw and attacked Lu Yichuan. Lu Yichuan was not to be outdone. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out. A blazing aura spread out and formed a terrifying sea of fire in the sky. Lu Yichuan was very smart. The moment he attacked the black-robed man, he had moved the battlefield away from the Clearheart Society. Bang! 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 Chapter 37-26. Boom! About a quarter of an hour later, a figure fell from the sky in a sorry state and smashed into the middle of a street below, smashing the street into pieces. The cultivators and mortals in the main city had long since distanced themselves from the battle between the two sides. They were all trembling with fear as they watched the battle between the two sides. Especially when they saw the black-robed man standing in the air, they knew that he was a genuine heaven-trampling change powerhouse. Yunjin Hill had never seen such a powerhouse before. Lu Yichuan suddenly climbed up from the ruins of the street. His body was burning with rolling flames. These flames continued to burn and spread around his body, forming the image of a toad. Oh, interesting. You've merged with the fire toad to this extent. That's quite surprising. The black-robed man looked surprised when he saw the flames burning around Lu Yichuan's body, forming the shadow of a toad. Unfortunately, you're still too weak. You're still no match for me. The black-robed man sneered as he formed a seal with both hands. Suddenly, dense black thunderbolts burst out from his body and circled around him. Then, they condensed on his back and formed a pair of black thunder wings. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the black-robed man appeared in front of Lu Yichuan. Lu Yichuan did not even have time to react. Boom! The black-robed man's right hand formed a claw. Intense black thunderbolts burst forth and landed heavily on Lu Yichuan's chest. So fast. Lu Yichuan only said that sentence. He did not even have time to defend himself before his chest was hit. The black-robed man's right hand directly penetrated Lu Yichuan. The black thunderbolts were like maggots that spread all over Lu Yichuan's body. They paralyzed his movements and made it impossible for him to move. The blazing flames on Lu Yichuan's body were suppressed by the black flames. The toad shadow formed by the flames also dissipated. Lu Yichuan, I can tell you that I'm no ordinary heaven-trampling change powerhouse. I'm only one step away from the void god transformation. I can count the number of heaven-treading transformation stage cultivators who can defeat me with my fingers in the entire Ji prefecture governor. There's no doubt that you'll lose to me. The black-robed man was expressionless. His right hand, which had pierced through Lu Yichuan's chest, suddenly squeezed. Instantly, dense black lightning bloomed, like shackles, imprisoning Lu Yichuan within the black lightning. Lu Yichuan suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body was wrapped in black lightning. He fell heavily to the ground, his entire body twitching. The black-robed man landed next to Lu Yichuan and grabbed him. He stepped into the sky and landed on the ship, throwing Lu Yichuan at the feet of the pale youth. Young master, your subordinate has not let you down. We've captured Lu Yichuan, the black-robed man said respectfully. The young man nodded and said with satisfaction, "Dechi, well done. Seal Lu Yichuan first, and when we return, I will ask someone to take out the fire toad from his body." The black-robed man nodded. After breaking Lu Yichuan's limbs, he imprisoned him and threw him to the side of the deck. "Now, let's go to the Lord's mansion and wait for the news of their arrest," the young man said indifferently. When Zhuoan returned to the main city, he was immediately stunned. He stopped at the entrance of the city. What's going on? Why is the main city surrounded by such a powerful sealing formation? Zhuoan frowned slightly. He could feel that the imprisonment formation was extremely powerful. It was at least at the level of a Tier 2 heaven-breaking formation. Who is so bold to cause trouble in my territory? Zhuoan snorted coldly. His right hand formed a claw and landed on the surface of the imprisonment formation. A purple wave spread out from his right hand. Suddenly, the imprisonment formation shook violently, and countless cracks appeared on it. In the end, it collapsed. "It's the Grand Lord." There were 2 guards at the city gate. When they saw Zhuoan casually tear apart the imprisonment formation, they were excited. "Do you know what happened in the main city?" Zhuoan asked curiously. "It's like this." The 2 guards told Zhuoan everything that had happened. When he heard that, Zhuoan's face darkened and he fell into deep thought. From what the 2 guards said, the young man who had suddenly arrived in the main city was not an ordinary person. Moreover, he heard that there was a great battle in the main city between the young man's subordinates and Lu Yichuan. It was said that the young man's subordinate was a Heaven Ascension change powerhouse. In the end, he defeated Lu Yichuan and captured him. From the guard's description, Lu Yichuan's strength had increased tremendously. He was only defeated after hundreds of moves with the Heaven Ascension change powerhouse. Their target is Lu Yichuan? Zhuoan thought of Di Wenxing. At that time, Di Wenxing had helped Yu Tianxiang attack the headquarters of the Clear Heart Society. It seemed that the Clear Heart Society itself had secrets. Otherwise, Di Wenxing and the mysterious young man would not have come to him. However, Zhuoan did not care too much about this. It was fine as long as these people did not provoke him. If anyone provoked him, no matter how great the power behind him was, he, Zhuoan, would definitely not swallow his anger. With Zhuoan's current strength and trump cards, there were probably not many people in the entire Ji prefecture who could kill him. He had enough confidence now. Moreover, after he had successfully cultivated the primordial technique, he could feel that his cultivation speed had become faster and his comprehension had become stronger. As time passed, he would only become stronger and rise rapidly. After Zhuoan entered the main city, he walked straight to the Gujian villa. When he arrived at the entrance of the Gujian villa, he saw that the 10 swordsmen had tied up 2 people and were about to enter the villa. "My lord, you're finally back." One sword noticed Zhuoan and quickly knelt on the ground to salute him. The rest of the 10 swordsmen followed suit and knelt down to salute him. Zhuoan nodded and had the 10 swordsmen rise. His gaze inadvertently fell on the 2 people who were tied up and could not help but be stunned. This was because he was not unfamiliar with the 2 people who were tied up. In fact, he was extremely familiar with them. This was because these 2 people were Apothecary Lu and Lu Miaozhen, who had rescued him from the valley. "Apothecary Lu, Miss Miaozhen, why are you here?" Zhuowen asked curiously. Apothecary Lu and Lu Miaozhen's eyes narrowed. They did not expect to meet Zhuowen at this time. Zhuowen, you're the villa lord of this villa. Also, why did you arrive at Yunjin City a day earlier than us? Apothecary Lu looked at Zhuowen in shock. When the 10 swordsmen saw Zhuowen, they all knelt on the ground. They could tell that Zhuowen was the owner of this villa. How dare you speak so impudently? Lord Shui is the lord of Yunjin City. How dare you call him by his name? Do you want to die? One sword berated Apothecary Lu. What? You're the lord? The rumors are true. The new lord is really you and not someone with the same name. Apothecary Lu's mouth was wide open in shock. Zhuowen smiled slightly and said, "It's a long story. One sword, release these 2 people first. Also, why do you want to capture them?" One sword hesitated and said in a low voice, "Lord Shui, these 2 people are of great importance. I'm afraid we can't release them. They are the people that Lord Murong Fuge wants." Murong Fuge? Zhuowen asked doubtfully. Sigh. Zhuowen, you can't do anything about this. Murong Fuge is a direct descendant of the Murong family, one of the 4 great families of the Ji province's magistrate. His status is extraordinary. Even if you're the lord of Yunjin City, it's useless. Chapter 37-27. Let them go. I will talk to Murong Fuge. Zhuowen said coldly. His sword met with Zhuowen's cold eyes and his body trembled. However, he did not dare to disobey Zhuowen and quickly released pharmacist Lu and Lu Miaozhen. Zhuowen, you will offend Murong Fuge. This is not a wise decision. Apothecary Lu looked deeply at Zhuowen and sighed. Zhuowen smiled and said, "Pharmacist Lu, Miss Miaozhen, my life was saved by the both of you. When you are in trouble, how can I just sit back and do nothing? Don't worry. As long as you are by my side, Murong Fuge will not be able to do anything to you." Pharmacist Lu and Lu Miaozhen looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They took Zhuowen's words as comforting words. Zhuowen led the group to the main hall. Outside the hall, Fan Shuang was waiting. "Master Zhui, you are finally back." Fan Shuang quickly went forward and bowed. Her beautiful eyes were filled with excitement. After Murong Fuge had captured Lu Yichuan, he had come to Gujian Villa again. He had said that he would only leave after the Grand Lord's mansion had captured Lu Yichuan. Moreover, Murong Fuge had given them a deadline of 3 days. If they could not capture Lu Miaozhen in 3 days, he would destroy Gujian Villa. Fan Shuang had been standing by his side, not daring to leave the main hall. She had been on tenterhooks, afraid that Murong Fuge would really destroy the Grand Lord's mansion. Now that Zhuowen had returned, she suddenly had a pillar of support. How could she not be excited? "Fan Shuang, where is Murong Fuge?" Zhuowen asked in a low voice. Fan Shuang pointed at the main hall and said, "Master Zhui, Murong Fuge and the rest are in the main hall. They are from the Murong family." "Master Zhui, you must be more polite." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and did not answer Fan Shuang. Instead, he stepped into the main hall. The main hall was very spacious and there were rows of tall wooden pillars on both sides. At the front of the main hall, a young man with a pale face sat on the main seat. 2 beautiful concubines were nestled on the young man's body. Sitting next to the main seat was a man in a black robe. His head was covered with a hood, so Zhuowen couldn't see the man's face clearly. "Master Zhui, he is Murong Fuge. The black-robed man sitting beside him is his subordinate. His name is Deqi. He's very powerful. He's at the pinnacle of the Heaven Ascension Change realm," Fan Shuang whispered to Zhuowen. Murong Fuge slowly raised his head and looked at Zhuowen. After discovering that the latter was only at the peak of the divine fetal transformation realm, a disdainful smile appeared on his face. "Are you the new lord of Yunjin Hill? Wasn't his cultivation a little too weak? What was wrong with the previous lord? Why would they let you become the new lord?" Murong Fuge said rather casually. "I killed the previous feudal lord, so I can become the current feudal lord," Zhuowen said calmly. Murong Fuge was stunned. He didn't think that Zhuowen would dare to refute him. However, Murong Fuge didn't care about Zhuowen's attitude. Instead, his gaze fell on Lu Miaozhen, who was behind Zhuowen. The smile on his face grew wider. The efficiency of the Overlord's residence is quite high. It's only been a few hours, and you've already caught the person I want. Tie this woman up and hand her to me. Murong Fuge pointed at Lu Miaozhen and said calmly. Lu Miaozhen's pretty face changed slightly. She quickly shrank behind Master Lu, her delicate body trembling. Murong Fuge, although you're from the Murong family, you still need a reason to capture someone, right? My granddaughter has no grudge against you. Why do you have to capture her? Master Lu said rather angrily. Murong Fuge sneered and said, Do I, Murong Fuge, need a reason to capture someone? It's her honor that I want to capture her. You old fart, you've been obstructing me. Then I'll kill you first. As he spoke, Murong Fuge flicked his finger with his right hand. A sharp, invisible needle-shaped chi quickly swept towards Master Lu's forehead. This chi was too fast. Master Lu didn't even have time to react. Just as the energy was about to enter Apothecary Lu's glabella, Zhuowen grabbed it in his hand and crushed it. Zhuowen, thank you. Master Lu was so shocked that he broke out in cold sweat. He could clearly feel that if the chi really entered his forehead, he would be dead for sure. Murong Fuge's eyes slowly narrowed and fell on Zhuowen. You've got guts. You actually dared to save the person I want to kill. Do you think that just because you're the overlord of Yunjin Hill, you're the ruler here? I can tell you that you're just a frog at the bottom of a well. If I, Murong Fuge, want to tear down Yunjin Hill, it's only a matter of a sentence. Murong Fuge slowly stood up and continued, Now, I'll give you a chance. Kneel in front of me, kowtow 100 times, and break one of your arms. Then, I'll give you a chance to live. The two beauties beside Murong Fuge looked at Zhuowen with ridicule in their eyes and laughed mockingly. They knew Murong Fuge's temper very well. They knew that Yunjin Hill Overlord was really playing with fire. He actually dared to block Murong Fuge's attack. Wasn't he courting death? The black-robed man looked at Zhuowen indifferently and sneered. He still didn't say a word. In his opinion, Yunjin Hill Overlord was really ignorant. He actually dared to save someone in front of young Master Murong. This was blasphemy against young Master Murong's authority. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed dangerously. He said coldly, You're sitting on my seat and you're still showing off in front of me. Who gave you the guts? Murong Fuge was stunned. The beauties beside him were also dumbfounded. The black-robed man's body stiffened. Fan Shuang and the others were even more worried. No one expected that not only was Zhuowen not afraid of Murong Fuge, but he even dared to challenge him. You are really courting death. Murong Fuge's face was terrifyingly gloomy. He was only halfway through his words when his expression changed drastically. A strong wind swept over, and his body was involuntarily thrown forward. Bang! Murong Fuge fell heavily to the ground, while his two beauties cried out in alarm and fell to the sides. Murong Fuge struggled to stand up. He was shocked to find that Zhuowen had unknowingly sat on the main seat. I'm the overlord of Yunjin Hill. This is my position. In my territory, even if you're a dragon, you'll have to coil up. Even if you're a tiger, you'll have to lie down. A strong dragon can't suppress a local snake. You came to my territory and yelled at me. Do you really think that a local snake like me is easy to bully? Zhuowen sat on the main seat. His voice was as cold as a knife, but every word was like a gem. No way. Lord Shuo. Fan Shuang and the 10 swordsmen's faces turned incomparably pale. They didn't expect Zhuowen's attitude to be so unyielding. He didn't give Murong Fuge any face at all. How dare you? Murong Fuge was mad with anger. He stood up again and rushed towards Zhuowen like a madman. The aura of the fetal god transformation surged out without any concealment. At the same time, Murong Fuge took out a blood spear from his spirit ring and threw it at Zhuowen. He followed behind the blood spear like a beast, ready to launch a thunderous attack at Zhuowen at any time. The black-robed man originally wanted to stand up and attack Zhuowen, but when he saw Murong Fuge use the blood spear, his expression changed slightly and his body involuntarily retreated a little. Chapter 37:28. Zhuowen was still sitting on the main seat when Bloodspear was about to reach his forehead. A golden light burst out from between his brows and a soul sword intent suddenly swept out and slashed at Bloodspear. Bang! A powerful force exploded, and Bloodspear was sent flying upwards. The powerful force spread out, and the entire roof of the main hall was completely shattered. What? This guy? Murong Fuge, who was originally following behind Bloodspear and ready to attack at any time, was stunned when he saw Bloodspear being sent flying. However, his body fell into Zhuowen's side due to inertia. Zhuowen was expressionless as he directly punched Murong Fuge in the face. Bang! A terrifying force spread out like ripples. Murong Fuge's right face was directly smashed out of shape. His facial bones were shattered and he smashed into the ground under Zhuowen's feet. Fan Shuang and the 10 swordsmen were stunned to find that Murong Fuge's head was directly stuffed into the ground, leaving only his body outside. Zhuowen was still sitting on the main seat and his right foot was unceremoniously stepping on Murong Fuge's back. Murong Fuge, who had been constantly struggling, was directly trampled to the ground by this foot. His head on the ground let out a whimper. Young master. When the two beauties saw Murong Fuge's head fall to the ground, they both cried out in shock and anger. The black-robed man roared and was about to rush towards Zhuowen. Do you want your young master to die? Zhuowen saw that the black-robed man was about to rush over and said calmly. The black-robed man, who was originally burning with anger, immediately stopped when he heard this and regained his composure. You're really bold. You know that we're from the Murong family and you still dare to attack my young master. You're digging your own grave, the black-robed man said in a low voice. At the same time, the black-robed man looked at Zhuowen with a gaze full of fear. This person could easily send Bloodspear flying, which proved that this person's strength was around the heaven-trampling transformation. However, the black-robed man was puzzled. Why was Zhuowen's aura only at the peak of the divine fetal transformation? Most likely, he was hiding his cultivation. When Zhuowen saw the black-robed man stop, he slowly lifted Murong Fuge, who was under his feet, with one hand. Murong Fuge's right cheek was swollen beyond recognition. His face was distorted, and he couldn't even speak clearly. Looks like Zhuowen's punch wasn't light. When Fan Shuang and the 10 swordsmen saw Murong Fuge's miserable state, their mouths couldn't help but twitch. This was a direct descendant of the Murong family. Yet, Zhuowen still dared to lay his hands on him. Just how careless was he? Bastard! You! As soon as Murong Fuge was mentioned, he saw Zhuowen and roared angrily. However, his words were a bit vague and unclear. Pa! As soon as Murong Fuge spoke, Zhuowen directly slapped him. Murong Fuge was stunned and was about to speak again, but Zhuowen gave him another backhand slap. Pa! 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 Just like that, under the dumbfounded gazes of the crowd, Zhuowen gave Murong Fuge more than 10 slaps. The sound of the slaps was simply too crisp. The black-robed man clenched his fists so tightly that they made cracking sounds, but he did not dare to rush forward. After all, Murong Fuge was currently in Zhuowen's hands. If he rushed forward and the latter directly killed Murong Fuge, then he would have a huge responsibility. Now you can speak. Speak, what did you want to say? Zhuowen casually lifted Murong Fuge up, moved closer to his face, and grinned. Murong Fuge was on the verge of tears. His head was dizzy, and the pain on his face was unbearable. Zhuowen's slap was not an ordinary slap. Instead, it was based on the shattering divine force. The power of the slap was absolutely terrifying, and Murong Fuge was about to be beaten to death. I was wrong, I shouldn't have sat in your main seat. Now that you've beaten me up, let me go. Murong Fuge's voice was choked with sobs. Everyone in the main hall was silent. They did not expect that Murong Fuge would be beaten to the point of begging for mercy. I've said it before, a strong dragon cannot suppress a local snake. Since I am the lord of Yunjin territory, then I am the rule of this territory. Even if you are from the Murong family, you have to follow my rules when you come to my territory. If it weren't for the fact that you are from the Murong family, I would have beaten you to death just now. How could I allow you to be so arrogant in front of me? Zhuowen's voice was calm, but the words he said were extremely arrogant. Now can you tell me why you came to my lord's mansion? As long as I, Zhuowen, can do it, I will do my best to help you. Zhuowen grinned, his smile was rather brilliant. When Murong Fuge saw Zhuowen's smile, his entire body couldn't help but tremble. He felt a chill run down his spine. This guy is too strange. His cultivation isn't high, so how can he be so powerful? Bastard, I'm going to tear down your lord's mansion today and make you die a horrible death. The black-robed man could no longer hold back. A powerful aura burst out from his body, and a terrifying murderous intent shot out from his eyes. When Zhuowen had beaten up Murong Fuge, he had already sentenced Zhuowen to death in his heart. De Qi, beat him half to death for me. Remember, don't beat him to death. Capture him, I want to torture him personally. I want him to suffer a fate worse than death. Murong Fuge's eyes were filled with hatred. Although his words were not very clear, the black-robed man could still hear them clearly. Two beautiful women hurried to Murong Fuge's side, supported him, and asked about his well-being. Oh, are you here to cause trouble? Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He turned to Fan Shuang and the 10 swordsmen, and said, you guys go out first. The further the better. Fan Shuang, the 10 swordsmen, and the others quickly nodded and led the cultivator army out of the main hall and out of the manor. It's over. Brother Zhuo actually beat up Murong Fuge. I'm afraid this will be difficult to resolve. Lu Miaozhen's beautiful eyes were filled with worry. Medicine Master Lu hurriedly comforted her, saying that the heavens help the worthy. However, his eyes were also filled with worry. Clearly, he didn't have much confidence in Zhuowen. Master Zhuo is too impulsive. That De Qi by Murong Fuge's side is a pinnacle heaven ascension change realm powerhouse. Even if Master Zhuo is really strong, he might not be a match for De Qi. Fan Shuang had a headache. She didn't expect Zhuowen to be so unyielding. When Zhuowen faced Lu Yichuan, she could understand his unyielding attitude. After all, Zhuowen's strength and status were above Lu Yichuan's. No matter how much trouble Lu Yichuan could cause, what trouble could he cause? However, the one who came this time was one of the 4 major families of the Ji province. This was a force far stronger than Yunjin region. Zhuowen was still so unyielding. Where did he get his confidence from? Miss Fan Shuang, Master Zhuo is not a fool. He is doing this for the 2 of them. Murong Fuge wants to capture them, but they are Master Zhuo's old friends. With Murong Fuge's arrogant attitude, he definitely won't give Master Zhuo face and let his friends go. He might even go overboard and ask Master Zhuo to apologize. Since the 2 are bound to clash in the end, Lord Zhuo would rather choose to go against them directly than compromise. Chapter 37-29. Boom. 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 After Fan Shuang and the rest retreated from the Gujian villa, they immediately felt 2 terrifying auras surging out from the villa. Then, a blinding energy spread out like the sun, and the huge Gujian villa was turned into a pile of ruins. 2 figures rushed out from the ruins, and the 2 continued to fight. Terrifying energy ripples spread out. Master Zhuo is already fighting with De Qi. What a terrifying aura. Is this the power of the heaven-trampling transformation? Fan Shuang stared at the fighting figures in the ruins of the villa in shock. The 10 swordsmen's eyes were filled with excitement. They said in a low voice, we have underestimated Master Zhuo's strength. He can fight with De Qi without being defeated. He is definitely not weaker than De Qi. Pharmacist Lu and Lu Miaozhen looked at the scene in shock. They still found it hard to believe that the young man they saved in the valley had hidden his strength so well. De Qi, what are you doing? Hurry up and cripple this guy. Murong Fuge summoned a divine ship, and it floated in mid-air not far from the ruins. Murong Fuge, with the help of my Ji, saw that De Qi and Zhuowen were locked in battle. He could not help but roar angrily. I did not expect you to have such strength. You are even stronger than Lu Yichuan, who has the blazing toad. But this is the end. Today, you will die here. De Qi formed a seal with his hands, and immediately, 5 bolts of black lightning appeared around him. The 5 bolts of black lightning were in the shape of different divine swords. Each of the divine swords formed by the black lightning were extraordinary and terrifying. This is my strongest divine power, the 5 thunder swords. Up until now, there has never been an opponent who has survived my attack. But don't worry. Master Murong has ordered that I only need to cripple you. I won't really kill you. De Qi sneered and waved his right hand at Zhuowen. Suddenly, the 5 thunder swords split into 5 different directions and rushed toward Zhuowen. That's fast. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. He could sense the power of the 5 divine thunder swords. Zhuowen did not hesitate to release 10 soul sword intents, barely blocking the first wave of the 5 swords of divine thunder. After the 5 swords of divine thunder brushed past Zhuowen's body, it once again turned around and charged towards Zhuowen. The 5 swords divine thunder was indeed powerful. Zhuowen had released 10 divine soul sword intents, but he was only barely able to resist it. At this moment, he was also in a rather sorry state. It had to be said that De Qi was indeed powerful. Although his cultivation was only at the pinnacle of the Ascension Change realm, Zhuowen could sense that De Qi was infinitely close to the Void God transformation realm. Haha. You have some ability, but the power of my 5 swords of divine thunder will become stronger with the passage of time. How long can you last under its attack? De Qi crossed his arms and sneered. His gaze landed on Lu Miaozhen, who was outside the Gujian villa. Haha, I'll make use of this time to kill all these ants. As for that woman, I'll capture her alive and hand her over to young master. De Qi no longer paid attention to Zhuowen. In his opinion, Zhuowen would not be able to escape from the continuous attacks of the 5 swords of divine thunder. Zhuowen also noticed that De Qi was charging towards Fan Shuang and the 10 swordsmen. He immediately guessed De Qi's intention. You're courting death. Zhuowen scoffed. He no longer held back and took out the half-moon god fire spear from his great world. Back then, the half-moon god fire spear had almost dimmed when it was attacked by the terrifying giant beast in the chaotic starry sky. However, after a period of nourishment, it had completely recovered. Zhuowen held the handle of the half-moon god fire spear and swung it. Instantly, countless spear shadows accompanied by terrifying divine flames surged out. The 5 swords of divine thunder that were charging towards Zhuowen were all shattered by the spear shadows. Then, Zhuowen raised the half-moon god fire spear and threw it towards De Qi. Bang! 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 Countless explosions resounded. Wherever the half-moon god fire spear passed, the air would explode and divine flames would fly everywhere. Just as De Qi arrived not far above Fan Shuang and the rest, he immediately heard the terrifying explosions behind him. The moment he turned around, he saw the half-moon god fire spear charging towards him. The half-moon god fire spear was too fast. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of De Qi. There was no time for De Qi to dodge. De Qi's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. He formed a seal with both hands. Blazing black lightning gathered in front of him, forming a solid black lightning shield. Moreover, this black lightning shield had 3 inner and 3 outer layers. There was a total of 6 layers. It was De Qi's strongest defensive sacred art. Rumble. The half-moon god fire spear landed on the lightning shield and let out an ear-piercing sound. Immediately after, the lightning shield exploded layer by layer. There were a total of 6 explosions. De Qi's lightning shield was completely destroyed. What? This is impossible. De Qi's eyes widened. He let out a scream of terror. Then, he watched as the half-moon god fire spear pierced through his chest and nailed him to the ground. Wherever the spear pointed, the ground cracked. It was as terrifying as an earthquake. Not far away, Fan Shuang and the rest were all affected. When the spear landed on the ground, it swept up a huge gust of wind and blew them a few thousand meters away. With the spear as the center, a huge hole appeared. At the center of the hole, De Qi was lying on his back. His chest was pierced through by the spear. His eyes were wide open. He was actually dead. Whoosh. Zhuowen slowly landed in the hole. He placed 1 foot on the end of the spear and stood there like a god. Fan Shuang, the 10 sword guards, the cultivator army, and medicine master Lu were all petrified. The surroundings were terrifyingly quiet. They did not expect Zhuowen, who was originally at a disadvantage, to explode with such terrifying power in an instant. Especially that spear. Its power was too terrifying. It was definitely not an ordinary spear. Murong Fuge, you want to capture me with this little bit of power? You're looking down on me. Zhuowen raised his head slightly and looked at Murong Fuge on the divine ship with a mocking smile. That's a heaven-breaking level 4 divine weapon? On the divine ship, Murong Fuge's pupils shrunk. Then, he quickly reacted and immediately drove the divine ship to escape into the distance. You can't escape. Zhuowen pulled out the half-moon god fire spear and threw it in the air again. The terrifying sound of the spear breaking through the air resounded above the main city. It was as if countless bombs were exploding one after another. All the cultivators in the main city involuntarily raised their heads to look at the sky. Rumble. The divine ship exploded. The two beauties on the deck did not even make a sound before they were annihilated in the sea of fire. Chapter 37:30. Cough, cough, cough. When Zhuowen arrived at the ruins, Murong Fuge was coughing up blood and had difficulty moving. He looked at Zhuowen in horror and quickly begged for mercy. Lord Shuo, don't kill me, please let me go, and we'll forget about what happened today. Don't worry, after I return to the Murong family, I won't take revenge on you. Fan Shuang, the 10 swordsmen, and the others quickly rushed over. Fan Shuang quickly said, Lord Shuo, you can't kill Murong Fuge. He's a direct descendant of the Murong family. If you kill him, you'll really have a death feud with the Murong family. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. Even if I don't kill Murong Fuge, I've already made a huge feud with the Murong family. When Murong Fuge returns, he'll definitely find a stronger cultivator to kill me. Since we've already made a feud, I'll have to get rid of him. With that, Zhuowen cut off Murong Fuge's head and destroyed his divine soul under the horrified gazes of Fan Shuang and the 10 swordsmen. Fan Shuang and the others felt a chill in their hearts as they looked at Zhuowen's back in awe. This Zhuowen was truly fearless. He had even killed a direct descendant of the Murong family without hesitation. Zhuowen casually took off Murong Fuge's spiritual ring and scanned it with his divine telekinesis. He was surprised to find a familiar figure inside. Zhuowen's divine telekinesis moved and a figure appeared in front of him. President Lu, what a coincidence. We meet again. The figure in the spiritual ring was Lu Yichuan, who was imprisoned by Murong Fuge. At that moment, Lu Yichuan's entire body was bound by black lightning and he could not move his limbs at all. Why am I here? Lord Shuo, did you let me out? Where's Murong Fuge? Lu Yichuan asked in surprise. He's lying there. Zhuowen pointed at Murong Fuge's corpse. What? Murong Fuge is dead. Lord Shuo, did you kill him? Lu Yichuan's eyes were filled with shock. Murong Fuge was indeed killed by Master Zhuo. That De Qi was also killed by Master Zhuo. Fan Shuang smiled bitterly. She knew that this matter had really blown up. If the Murong family were to find out about it, they would probably fly into a rage. They might even implicate Yunjin Hill. Zhuowen smiled when he saw that everyone was silent. He said, I know what all of you are thinking. Don't worry, when the people from the Murong family come to Yunjin to denounce us, just say that it was me who did it. Also, from today onwards, I will pass the position of Lord of Yunjin Hill to Lu Yichuan. I am no longer the Lord of Yunjin Hill. I killed Murong Fuge for my own personal reasons. I don't think that the Murong family would be so crazy as to go against the entire Yunjin territory. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. They never thought that Zhuowen would actually give up the position of feudal lord. However, none of them had any objections. Just as Zhuowen had said, if he continued to be the Lord of Yunjin Hill, his identity alone would implicate the entire Yunjin Hill. Lu Yichuan's gaze was extremely complicated. He had been saved twice by Zhuowen. Moreover, Zhuowen had even given up the position of Yunjin Hill's lord to him. He did not know how to repay Zhuowen's great kindness. He had even thought of going against Zhuowen before. This made Lu Yichuan feel quite ashamed. Zhuowen did not feel any regret. He had never thought of staying in Yunjin Hill for too long. He had already successfully broken through the heavens. Furthermore, Yunjin Hill did not have any higher-level visualization images. Therefore, he had already planned to leave. He planned to go to Ji Province to look for higher-level visualization techniques and cultivation resources. This was also the reason why he had dared to kill Murong Fuge. After he left Yunjin Hill, it would not be easy for the Murong family to find him. Moreover, with his current strength, unless the Murong family sent out a true expert, they might not be able to do anything to him. Lu Yichuan suddenly grabbed Zhuowen's shoulder. He looked at Zhuowen with a complicated gaze and said in a deep voice, Brother Zhuo, the position of Lord has been my goal for so many years. It is also a goal that I have to achieve. Today, you have given up this position to me. I am extremely grateful. I don't dare to forget your kindness. Come with me, I have something I want to give to you. This item will definitely be of help to you when you face the Murong family in the future. Zhuowen was stunned. He looked at Lu Yichuan's mysterious expression. He thought for a moment and nodded. Thus, the two of them went to the other side of the ruins. Brother Zhuo, do you know why Di Wanxing and Murong Fuge came looking for me? Lu Yichuan asked seriously. Zhuowen shook his head. Lu Yichuan's legend was true. Both Di Wanxing and Murong Fuge had captured Lu Yichuan alive. It seemed that Lu Yichuan had a big secret. Because I have a star weapon fragment. It is called the Fire Toad. Di Wanxing was sent by Murong Fuge. Later, he was killed by you, Brother Zhuo. Murong Fuge thought that I killed Di Wanxing, so he came to Yunjin territory personally to capture me. Later, I was defeated by De Qi and was captured alive. Lu Yichuan smiled bitterly. Zhuowen's expression changed. He had not expected Lu Yichuan to have a star weapon fragment. It was no wonder that he was targeted by the Murong family. Zhuowen looked at Lu Yichuan. He knew that there must be a reason why Lu Yichuan had told him this. Brother Zhuo, I got the Fire Toad by chance. But my strength is too weak, and I don't have enough background. As the saying goes, a man's wealth is his own ruin. I still have the Fire Toad. I am afraid that I will be targeted again in the future. So, I plan to give the Fire Toad to you. Consider it as my repayment for saving my life twice and giving up the position of Lord, Lu Yichuan said sincerely. Zhuowen looked at Lu Yichuan seriously. Although he had not been in the 100 territories for long, he knew how precious a star weapon fragment was. It was a great opportunity for a cultivator to get one. However, Lu Yichuan was actually willing to give the astral weapon fragment to him. Wasn't this a little too generous? Brother Lu, don't you have any other conditions for giving me such a precious item? Just because I saved you and gave you the position of Lord? Zhuowen asked with a frown. Lu Yichuan scratched his head awkwardly and said, Actually, there is one more condition. I am afraid that you, Brother Zhuo, might not agree, so I am a little embarrassed to say it. Just say it. As long as I can do it, I will definitely help you. Zhuowen said. If it was in the past, Zhuowen would not be interested in star weapon fragments. But since the Tai Word Stone had absorbed the blood thorn and turned it into his strength, he had a great desire for star weapon fragments. Since Lu Yichuan was willing to give him the Fire Toad, Zhuowen was naturally willing to do something for Lu Yichuan. I once made an agreement with a woman from the Nangong family. As long as I become the Lord of Yunjin Ridge, she is willing to give me a chance to become her cultivation companion. And this chance is that I can defeat her cousin, Nangong Wuji. Nangong Wuji is the most powerful genius among the younger generation of the Nangong family. He is extremely powerful. I think that even if I have the Fire Toad, I have no chance to defeat Nangong Wuji. But, Brother Zhuo, you are so powerful and talented. You may have a chance. As long as I defeat Nangong Wuji, I will be able to become Nangong My Er's cultivation companion. This is my greatest wish in life. Speaking of this, Lu Yichuan's eyes lit up. He seemed to be quite excited. Zhuowen was speechless. It turned out that Lu Yichuan fought so hard to become the Lord of Yunjin Ridge just for a woman. Does your agreement allow you to ask for help? Zhuowen asked. Chapter 37-31. Brother Zhuo, you didn't even ask about Nangong Wuji's cultivation base before you agreed. Lu Yichuan asked in surprise. No matter how powerful Nangong Wuji is, he is only a young man. He is no match for me, Zhuo Wen said calmly. Lu Yichuan smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, although Nangong Wuji is at the peak of the heaven-treading change realm like De Qi, his ancestral Dao root is much more powerful than De Qi's. Oh, what kind of ancestral Dao root is it? Zhuo Wen asked curiously. Nangong Wuji has the blood-drinking ancestral Dao root. This ancestral Dao root is very special. When he fights with his enemies, he can absorb their blood essence to recover himself. In other words, as long as his enemies are still fighting, Nangong Wuji will be able to replenish his energy. He once killed an early void god transformation realm expert with this ancestral Dao root. When Lu Yichuan said this, the bitter smile on his face became even more intense. He had already accepted his fate. Even if he obtained the fire toad, he was still no match for Nangong Wuji. Moreover, Nangong Wuji was extremely talented. His cultivation speed was much faster than Lu Yichuan's. The gap between them would only grow bigger in the future. Zhuo Wen's combat strength was extremely abnormal. This ignited hope in Lu Yichuan's heart. That was why he went to look for Zhuo Wen. Oh, there is such an ancestral Dao root. Zhuo Wen frowned. It seemed like the 100 outer domains was indeed extraordinary. There were many more ancestral Dao roots here than in the lower domain. At the same time, Zhuo Wen also thought of Sakyamuni's ancestral Dao root. Sakyamuni was chosen by Bing Hui and brought to the deviant ghost tribe. The NTI Shiva's ancestral Dao root must be very powerful as well. Nangong Wuji is one of the most terrifying geniuses among the younger generation of the Ji Prefecture's governor. Brother Zhuo, you must think carefully. Nangong Wuji is not easy to deal with. Lu Yichuan said solemnly. Yes, I know. I have decided to help you with this. But give me some time. Zhuo Wen nodded. Although Nangong Wuji was powerful, Zhuo Wen was more confident in himself. If Nangong Wuji's cultivation advanced to the next level and reached the spirit transformation realm, he would be able to fuse with the fire toad's power. No matter how strong Nangong Wuji was, he would only be at the heaven-trampling transformation realm. Good. Brother Zhuo, I believe in you. Tomorrow, I will personally go to the Gujian villa and pass the fire toad to you, Lu Yichuan said excitedly. Next, Lu Yichuan took the Lord's seal and bid farewell to Zhuo Wen and the others. He was already the new Lord of Yunjin Hill and planned to set up the Lord's mansion in the Clear Heart Society's headquarters. As for Zhuo Wen, he ordered the cultivator army to rebuild the Gujian manor. Not long after, the Gujian villa that was originally in ruins was completely rebuilt. Alchemist Lu, Miss Miaozhen, if you don't mind, you can stay in the manor for a few nights, Zhuo Wen said with a smile. Alchemist Lu and Lu Miaozhen were obviously uneasy, but they did not refuse. In the main hall, Alchemist Lu and Lu Miaozhen sat on the side seats while Zhuo Wen sat on the main seat. Fan Shuang and the 10 swordsmen stood around him. Oh right. Why does Murong Fuge want to capture Miss Miaozhen? Zhuo Wen asked curiously. In Zhuo Wen's opinion, Alchemist Lu and Lu Miaozhen did not have any background and their identities were very ordinary. Why would they be targeted by Murong Fuge? Alchemist Lu's eyes flickered and he sighed. It's all because Miaozhen's ancestral root is special. Murong Fuge has his eyes on her, because Miaozhen's ancestral root is the spiritual water root. Hearing that, Zhuo Wen was puzzled while the 10 swordsmen and Fan Shuang were shocked. It's the spiritual water root. No wonder Murong Fuge wants to capture Miss Miaozhen, Fan Shuang said in surprise. What's wrong with the spiritual water root? Zhuo Wen was puzzled. Manor Lord, you don't even know what the spiritual water root is? Fan Shuang asked curiously. Zhuo Wen rubbed his nose embarrassedly. After all, he had just come up from the lower realm and was a complete newbie. The spiritual water root is the best cultivation vessel in the 100 domains outside of the lower realm. If you dual cultivate with a female cultivator with the spiritual water root, you can greatly increase your cultivation. This is much more miraculous than any elixir. Fan Shuang looked at Lu Miaozhen with a complicated expression. Although the spiritual water root was a supreme-grade ancestral root, it was also a ticking time bomb. It was not difficult for her to imagine that Lu Miaozhen's fate would be extremely tragic in the future. Lu Miaozhen lowered her head and her eyes dimmed. There is still a chance for Miaozhen. Elder Yuchi of the Ascension sect has the spiritual water root, but she is an elder of the Ascension sect. She has a high status and powerful strength. As long as Miaozhen can become Elder Yuchi's disciple, her fate will change, Alchemist Lu suddenly said. The Ascension sect. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He had heard of the Ascension sect. It was said that it was one of the 5 sects in the Ji prefecture. The 5 sects' foundation and power were not inferior to the 4 aristocratic families. If Lu Miaozhen was really chosen by the Ascension sect and entered the sect, no one would dare to touch her even if she had the spiritual water root. Then are you planning to go to the Ascension sect to participate in the recruitment ceremony? Fan Shuang asked. Alchemist Lu shook his head and said, that is not the case. I have heard that the Ascension sect will send a team to the many territories in the Yunjin region to recruit disciples. Looking at the time, I think the Ascension sect's team will be arriving soon. The leader this time is Elder Yuchi. Zhuowen nodded and said, if that is the case, then the 2 of you can stay in the Gujian villa for now. During this period, I will protect your safety until Lady Miaozhen is taken in by the Ascension sect. Alchemist Lu and Lu Miaozhen thanked Zhuowen excitedly. At night, outside the main hall, One Sword was kneeling in the courtyard. Zhuowen walked out of the main hall slowly and looked at One Sword. He said, One Sword, how long have you been stuck at the pinnacle of the divine transformation stage? Villa Master, I have reached the pinnacle of the divine transformation stage 1,000 years ago. However, I have not been able to grasp the key points of the spirit transformation stage. So, One Sword said bitterly. The divine transformation stage is mainly a transformation of the physical body. The spirit transformation stage is a transformation of the soul. Your foundation is enough to break through to the spirit transformation stage. The reason why you have not broken through is because your soul is too weak. As Zhuowen spoke, he walked in front of One Sword and said seriously, I can raise your soul to a certain level in a short period of time. I can make it transform quickly and help you break through to the spirit transformation stage. However, it will be very painful. Can you accept it? One Sword said firmly, Villa Master, as long as I can break through, I can accept any kind of pain. All right. Zhuowen's gaze turned serious. He formed a sword with his right hand and pointed it at One Sword's forehead. The soul power that contained the power of the primordial stone gathered into a purple current and poured into the depths of One Sword's soul. One Sword immediately let out a blood-curdling scream. All the hair on his body stood on end. His face was pale and beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. However, his gaze became firm. Chapter 37-32. When Zhuowen saw Yi Jian's performance, he nodded his head slightly. Yi Jian was indeed a talent that could be molded. Just his temperament was something that he admired. Time slowly passed. Finally, a powerful aura burst out from the courtyard and soared into the sky. This aura was extremely powerful and it alarmed all the cultivators in the main city. This aura. It's definitely someone who broke through to the spirit transformation. Back then, President Lu of the Clear Heart Association had the same feeling when she broke through. I never thought that someone would break through again. Looking at the direction, it's the Gujian Villa. Who broke through over there? Many cultivators looked at the Gujian Villa from afar, but no one dared to approach it. Ever since the battle between Yu Tianxiang and Di Wenxing, Zhuowen had already made a name for himself in the main city. Many people were in awe of Zhuowen. Without his permission, no one dared to approach the Gujian Villa. Inside the villa, the cultivator army surrounded the main hall. Their eyes were filled with envy, especially the other 9-10 sword guards. They had joy in their eyes. They already knew that Yi Jian went to the main hall because the villa lord wanted to help him break through. From the looks of it, Yi Jian had successfully broken through. I'll only help you up to here. You'll have to deal with the spirit transformation, heavenly tribulation yourself. Zhuowen withdrew his sword fingers and placed his hands behind his back as he returned to the main hall. Yi Jian knelt on the ground and bowed 3 times towards Zhuowen. Then, he stomped his right foot and flew out of the villa. The spirit transformation, heavenly tribulation, wasn't simple. If he were to directly undergo it in the villa would be torn down. Not long later, a terrifying lightning tribulation appeared in a bamboo forest far away from the villa. Bolts of blue lightning descended from the depths of the sky. They were like blue halberds that pierced towards the person undergoing the tribulation. The heavenly tribulation lasted for an entire night. At dawn, a man whose flesh was torn open staggered out from the depths of the bamboo forest. The 10 sword guards and the cultivator army were already waiting outside the bamboo forest. When the man walked out, 9 of the 10 sword guards immediately went forward to support Yi Jian. Big brother, you successfully broke through? You're now in the spirit transformation stage, Jian said excitedly. It's all thanks to the Manor Lord that I was able to break through. If it wasn't for the Manor Lord, I don't know when I would be able to successfully break through. Help me back first. I've just finished my tribulation. I'm too weak, one sword said in a weak voice. 9 of the 10 swords guards hurriedly helped Yi Jian back to the Gujian villa. On the other hand, their respect for Zhuowen grew. Not only was Zhuowen powerful, but he could also help others break through their cultivation. This ability was truly terrifying. At the same time, they were proud to have a manor lord like Zhuowen. At noon on the second day, Lu Yichuan paid another visit to the Gujian villa. Zhuowen met Lu Yichuan alone. In a secret room, Lu Yichuan and Zhuowen sat facing each other. In front of them was a table. Brother Zhuo, this is the fire toad. Lu Yichuan stretched out his right hand. There was a lifelike toad pattern on his right arm. Next, I will need to peel off the fire toad. This will consume a lot of broken divine power. I'm afraid I will need your help, Lu Yichuan said. Brother Lu, don't worry. I will share my broken divine power with you and help you peel off the fire toad, Zhuowen said seriously. Lu Yichuan did not speak any nonsense. After receiving Zhuowen's reply, he closed his eyes and formed a seal with his left hand. It landed on the fire toad pattern on his right arm. Suddenly, the fire toad seemed to have come alive. The surrounding temperature increased rapidly. Waves of fire aura filled the secret room like a tyrannosaurus. Lu Yichuan's face turned pale. Moreover, Zhuowen discovered that Lu Yichuan's cheeks began to sink in. His body was also shriveling at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhuowen was rather shocked. He did not expect that peeling off the fire toad would consume so much energy. Seeing that Lu Yichuan's aura was getting weaker and weaker, Zhuowen did not dare to delay. He placed his right hand on Lu Yichuan's back and surged broken divine power into Lu Yichuan's body. He soon discovered that his broken divine power seemed to have entered a bottomless pit. It was rapidly being absorbed. After about half an hour, Zhuowen's body began to shrivel. However, Lu Yichuan was still absorbing broken divine power. Zhuowen knew that this was a critical moment. He must not drop the ball. Therefore, he took out the chaos crystal and began to absorb while continuously transmitting broken divine power to Lu Yichuan. Another 2 hours passed. Lu Yichuan suddenly opened his eyes. Then, he pulled his left hand and the fire toad pattern on his right arm disappeared. In Lu Yichuan's palm, a jade fragment appeared. If one looked carefully, this jade fragment was a toad's eye. Zhuowen could sense an extremely rich fire element aura from this toad's eye. Moreover, this aura was extremely violent and destructive. However, Zhuowen could sense that this fire toad's aura was slightly weaker than the blood thorn he obtained previously. However, the weakness was not very obvious. Lu Yichuan slowly opened his eyes. He was extremely tired and said weakly, Brother Zhuo, this is the fragment of the star weapon fire toad. Although it's only an eye, its power is extremely impressive. Because I only completed the first stage of the blood sacrifice, I can only unleash a portion of its power. If not, I would not have been captured so easily by that De Qi. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He looked at Lu Yichuan and said, "You completed the blood sacrifice? Using the lives of mortals?" Lu Yichuan shook his head and said, "I'm not that despicable. I used myself and the brothers of the Clear Heart Association who volunteered to donate blood every day. After many days and nights, I barely completed the first stage of the blood sacrifice." Hearing this, Zhuo Wen's opinion of Lu Yichuan rose. Although Lu Yichuan was quite selfish, his heart was actually not bad. He knew how to repay kindness. Also, brother Zhuo, since you obtained this fire toad fragment, it's best that you don't perform the blood sacrifice rashly. This method is against the harmony of the heavens. The sin of the blood sacrifice will not be on the star weapon spirit's head. It will be on you, the possessor. Although sin is illusory, it actually exists in the unseen world. Some great Avilders often end up in a miserable state. Lu Yichuan reminded Zhuowen. Zhuowen smiled. He had a heaven-defying treasure like the primordial stone. He did not need the blood sacrifice to fully unleash the power of the star weapon. At the entrance of the villa, after sending Lu Yichuan off, Zhuowen told Fan Shuang that he planned to go into seclusion for a few days. During this period, he was not to disturb him. In the secret room, Zhuowen held the fire toad fragment in his right hand. His eyes flickered. He did what he did last time and probed into the fire toad with his divine sense. A feeling of dizziness assaulted him. Zhuo Wen discovered that the place he was currently in was actually a world filled with a blazing sea of fire. A sea of fire rushed toward them. Fire energy filled the sky and the ground. Chapter 37-33. It's a different person again. Human, if you want to borrow my power, you have to sacrifice 100,000 people first. Only then will I consider lending you my power. The huge fire toad looked down at Zhuowen. Its huge eyes stared coldly at Zhuowen. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. This fire toad's appetite was really big. It wanted to sacrifice 100,000 people as soon as it opened its mouth. Did it really think that it was his master? Haha, 100,000 people as a sacrifice? I'm afraid I can't do that, Zhuowen said indifferently. Then 50,000 people. This is the lowest number I can give you. If you can't do it, I'll swallow your soul. The fire toad said rudely. I'm sorry, I can't take out 50,000 people either, Zhuowen still said calmly. The fire toad's eyes suddenly became unfriendly. It stared at Zhuowen and said, "Do you want to die? You can't even do what I asked, and you're delusional about getting my power. How about this? How many people can you sacrifice? As long as it's not too little, I'll give you some power if I'm in a good mood." Zhuowen smiled and said, "I can't give you even one person. But I want all of your power." Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the fire toad's body burst out with a terrifying flame aura. The surrounding sea of fire formed a huge fire dragon that swept toward Zhuowen. "You dare to trick me? Fine, I'll kill you now." The fire toad's furious voice came. The fire dragon came across the sky and instantly drowned Zhuowen. However, the fire toad didn't notice that when the fire dragon drowned Zhuowen, Zhuowen took out an ordinary stone from the macro world. Bang! Suddenly, a strange purple light emerged from the fire dragon's body and instantly dyed the fiery red flames on the surface of the fire dragon a deep purple. Crack, crack, crack. The fire dragon twisted in pain and finally collapsed into countless sparks. Zhuowen slowly walked out of the countless sparks. A stone emitting a mysterious purple light floated in front of him. The fire toad stared at the stone floating in front of Zhuowen. It sensed an aura of fear and suffocation. This is primordial stone? How could this be? How did you get this kind of stone? The flame toad let out a sharp cry, and then it retreated repeatedly while looking at the floating stone with fear in its eyes. Zhuowen sneered as he took a step forward. His body was like lightning as he instantly appeared in front of the fire toad. Then, he tossed the supreme word stone to the flame toad. The flame toad cried out in fear. It mobilized the energy of the surrounding sea of flames to envelop the supreme word stone. It wanted to burn it down. Unfortunately, it didn't help at all. The supreme word stone emitted a mysterious purple light, and the sea of flames was completely shattered. Then, the supreme word stone smashed into the flame toad. The fire toad cried out in pain. Then, it was rapidly sucked into the supreme word stone. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. The supreme word stone was floating in front of him. At this moment, the supreme word stone landed on his palm. Then, Zhuowen saw a purple eyeball pattern appear on his palm. Moreover, this purple eyeball pattern was constantly approaching the purple thorn. In the end, it fused with the purple thorn. The new pattern was a purple dagger, but there was a lifelike purple eyeball at the handle of the dagger. Two different star weapon fragments fused together? Zhuowen was completely stupefied. He originally thought that after the supreme word stone absorbed the flame toad, the pattern of the flame toad would appear again and attach to other parts of his body. However, he never expected that the flame toad and the purple thorn would fuse together in the end. Moreover, after the fusion, this new star weapon fragment was much more powerful than the flame toad and the purple thorn. Its strength had already surpassed the half-moon divine fire spear and reached the power of a level 5 heaven-piercing divine weapon. Without a doubt, this fusion of star weapon fragments had become Zhuowen's strongest trump card. Zhuowen suppressed the extreme excitement in his heart. He looked at the new pattern on his palm and said in a deep voice, "Naturally, this is the fusion of the purple thorn and the flame toad. Then, its new name shall be the purple toad." Zhuowen looked at the supreme word stone floating in front of him. At this moment, he realized that the mystery of the immemorial primordial stone was still beyond his expectations. Not only did it contain the extremely powerful immemorial primordial technique, but it could also fuse with star weapon fragments. The origin of the immemorial primordial stone was probably extraordinary. Dong dong dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Zhuowen opened the door and saw Fan Shuang standing outside. "Fan Shuang, what's the matter?" Zhuowen asked. Fan Shuang said respectfully, "The Ascension Sect's team has arrived in the main city today. Lu Yichuan is now receiving them. Lady Miaozhen has also been selected by Elder Yuqi of the Ascension Sect. She is here to bid farewell, so I took the liberty to disturb." Bid farewell? When did the Ascension Sect's team arrive in the main city? Zhuowen asked in surprise. 3 days ago. My lord, you have been in seclusion for 7 days. Fan Shuang answered. Zhuowen was stunned. He did not expect that 7 days had already passed. It seemed like the flow of time in the flame toad's alternate space was completely different from the outside world. He clearly felt that only a short while had passed, but 7 days had already passed in the outside world. "Let's go. Bring me there." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he followed Fan Shuang and left the courtyard. In the Gujian Villa's guest hall, a group of 5 people sat quietly. The person in the lead was a beautiful woman in her 30s. The dense aura of water exuding from the beautiful woman's body was much stronger than Lu Miaozhen's. Sitting on both sides of the beautiful woman were a man and a woman. The man was handsome, and the woman was pretty. Lu Miaozhen sat at the last seat, and alchemist Lu accompanied her silently. "What's going on? The Gujian Villa's villa master is too arrogant. He's just the villa master of a small Yunjin ridge, and he actually needs someone to report to him before he can come out. Now, he's leaving us here. Does he really think he's someone important?" The young woman said unhappily. "If it weren't for junior sister Miaozhen, we wouldn't have come to such a lousy place," the young man said unhappily. However, after he finished speaking, the young man's gaze was still fixed on Lu Miaozhen. After he found out that Lu Miaozhen had the spiritual water root, he had already decided to pursue Lu Miaozhen and make her his cultivation partner. It should be known that a spiritual water root was the best Dao root to be a cultivation partner. As long as Lu Miaozhen could become his cultivation partner, his cultivation speed would definitely be much faster in the future. The young woman also noticed that the young man kept looking at Lu Miaozhen, and she snorted with dissatisfaction. She had been interested in the young man for a long time, and the young man was also interested in her. However, Lu Miaozhen had appeared. She also knew that with Lu Miaozhen's spiritual water root, the young man would definitely not pay too much attention to her. Instead, he would revolve around Lu Miaozhen. Therefore, the young woman disliked Lu Miaozhen more and more. She was also extremely displeased with the Gujian Villa's villa master. Chapter 37-34. The beautiful woman, who was resting with her eyes closed, slowly opened her eyes. She said indifferently, "Stop talking, the two of you. The host is here." The young man and young woman immediately fell silent. Then, they saw two figures walking in from outside the guest hall. These two people were naturally Zhuowen and Fan Shuang. When Lu Miaozhen saw Zhuowen enter, she immediately stood up and went forward to greet him. She held Zhuowen's hand and said excitedly, "Big brother Zhuo, I've successfully become an inner court disciple of the Ascension sect. It's all thanks to you for protecting me these days. Otherwise, we wouldn't have lasted until now." Apothecary Lu also sighed and said, "It's all thanks to you, Zhuowen. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't even be able to see the people from Ascension sect." Zhuowen waved his hand and said, "Apothecary Lu, Miaozhen, you're too polite. You saved my life back then. You're like my parents. It's only right that I help you." When the young man saw Lu Miaozhen holding Zhuowen's hand directly, he frowned and was a little angry. Lu Miaozhen was the woman he liked. How could he tolerate her being so intimate with someone else? Especially when the young man realized that Zhuowen's cultivation was similar to his, which was around the peak of the fetal god transformation stage. A trace of contempt appeared in his eyes. He was an inner disciple of Ascension sect, and he cultivated high-grade divine abilities. The disciples of Ascension sect were much stronger than ordinary cultivators of the same level. Therefore, when the young man saw that Zhuowen's cultivation was the same as his, he didn't think much of him. The young man suddenly stood up and stepped in front of Lu Miaozhen. He looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly gaze. Originally, Zhuowen, Lu Miaozhen, and Apothecary Lu were chatting happily. However, when the young man joined in, he immediately destroyed the harmonious atmosphere. "Senior brother Sang?" Lu Miaozhen looked at the young man in front of her in confusion. "You're the villa master of Gujian Villa? We're from Ascension sect. We came to visit your villa personally, but you actually made us wait. Does your villa not want to exist anymore?" The young man said indifferently. Lu Miaozhen was so anxious that tears were about to fall from her eyes. She did not expect that the young man would directly come up and question Zhuowen. Lu Miaozhen turned her gaze to the beautiful woman, only to see that the beautiful woman had her eyes closed again, as if she hadn't seen what had happened. "Master," Lu Miaozhen opened her mouth, intending to ask the beautiful woman for help, but she was stopped by Apothecary Lu. After all, Apothecary Lu had lived for a long time. He was much more knowledgeable about the ways of the world than Lu Miaozhen. From the beautiful woman's current attitude, it could be seen that she was actually somewhat displeased with Zhuowen's late arrival. This was why she allowed the young man to do whatever he wanted. As for Zhuowen, Alchemist Lu wasn't too worried. He was well aware of Zhuowen's strength. He definitely wouldn't be at a disadvantage against this young man. On the contrary, the young man should be the one at a disadvantage. This manor lord was in seclusion just now, so I didn't know that an extremely important guest had come to pay a visit. That was why I was slightly late. I don't think the Ascension sect only has mad dogs. There must be reasonable people. Zhuowen didn't look at the young man. Instead, his gaze landed on the beautiful woman, who was still sitting in her seat with her eyes closed. The young man was startled. His shoulders were shaking from anger. "This bastard dares to call me a mad dog. This is infuriating. You are merely a manor lord of Yunjin Hill. How dare you speak without thinking in front of me? Die." The young man's eyes were full of killer's intent. He formed a hand seal with his right hand and slammed it towards Zhuowen. The sound of an elephant's trumpeting resonated in the air. Countless gusts of wind swirled around and formed the silhouette of a giant elephant behind the young man. This was the young man's strongest technique, the elephant hoof. When he punched out, it was as if countless elephants were stomping down. Senior brother is using this technique. Is he going to kill him? The young woman's expression changed. She originally thought the young man was only going to teach him a lesson. She didn't think that he was going to kill him. The beautiful woman opened her eyes and frowned. Just as she was about to step out to stop the young man, something unexpected happened. Zhuo Wen also threw out a punch. It was a very ordinary punch. However, when he punched out, a purple wave spread out in all directions. Bang! When the two fists collided, the young man screamed in pain. His right fist exploded into a cloud of blood mist and fell heavily in the courtyard outside the guest hall. Puff! The young man spat out a mouthful of blood. He glared at Zhuo Wen and fainted. On the other hand, Zhuo Wen stood on the same spot. He was as motionless as a rock and as steady as Mount Tai. This guy is so strong. The young woman was stunned. The young man was an expert who ranked 11th among the Ascension sect's inner disciples. His strength shouldn't be underestimated. However, he couldn't even withstand one blow from this person and was knocked unconscious. Is this guy really at the divine transformation stage? The beautiful woman's figure flashed and came to the young man's side in the courtyard. After checking him, her beautiful eyes turned cold. You completely crippled his right hand? The beautiful woman's voice was filled with coldness as she said coldly. Zhuo Wen didn't care at all. He said indifferently, I gave the Ascension sect face because Miaozhen joined the Ascension sect and is now a disciple of the Ascension sect. I didn't kill him and only crippled one of his arms. If it wasn't for Miaozhen, he would have been a dead man just now. The young woman's heart turned cold. For the first time, she looked at Zhuo Wen seriously. She originally didn't care about the little manor master. However, he was actually so powerful and arrogant. Where did this person get his confidence from? I'm Elder Yuchi of the Ascension sect. How dare you cripple my disciple in front of me? You really don't take me seriously, the beautiful woman said with a murderous aura. Zhuo Wen's eyes were calm. He said, What? You want to avenge your disciple? Master, don't. Big brother Zhuo is my benefactor. He has been protecting me all this time. Please don't do anything to big brother Zhuo. Lu Miaozhen couldn't hold it in any longer and said hurriedly. Elder Yuchi took a deep breath and said in a low voice, Miaozhen, don't worry. I won't kill this person. However, I have to teach him a lesson. He is really too arrogant. He doesn't take the Ascension sect seriously at all. Speaking up to this point, Elder Yuchi looked at Zhuo Wen and said, Ying Wei offended you first. You injured him and he deserved it. However, you are arrogant and look down on the Ascension sect. I'm going to interfere in this matter. I'll give you a chance. Take 3 of my moves. If you can take it, I won't pursue this matter. However, if you can't take it, kneel down and apologize to Ying Wei. Lu Miaozhen's pretty face changed slightly. She hurriedly said, Big brother Zhuo, don't agree. My master is a void god transformation expert. You won't be able to take 3 of her moves. What? A void god transformation expert? As expected of the Ascension sect. Even an ordinary elder is a void god transformation expert. Fan Shuang's face changed drastically. She hurriedly tried to dissuade Zhuo Wen. Zhuo Wen's lips curled up slightly. He said indifferently, What if I can take 3 of your moves and defeat you? So what? Elder Yuchi was stunned. Was Zhuo Wen's brain flooded with water? How dare he dream of defeating her? That's impossible. Elder Yuchi said indifferently. Chapter 37-35. The young lady stood up abruptly and looked at Elder Yuchi in shock. Master, this divine pill. Before the young lady could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by Elder Yuchi. Qinyan, you don't have to worry about this. I am a void god transformation realm cultivator. How could I lose to a fetal god transformation realm cultivator? Elder Yuchi said coldly. The young lady opened her mouth but she was speechless. The void god transformation realm was 2 realms higher than the fetal god transformation realm. Qinyan believed that Elder Yuchi would definitely win. Zhuo Wen was just boasting. However, The young lady felt that something was amiss, but she could not put her finger on it. Elder Yuchi walked out of the guest hall and came to the courtyard outside. "Come out," Elder Yuchi said coldly as she looked at Zhuowen. "Let's go to the empty land outside the villa. With our battle, I'm afraid my villa will be torn down again." Zhuowen stepped out of the guest hall and flew out of the villa. Elder Yuchi coldly snorted. She took a step into the air and soared into the sky. Her posture was clearly much more elegant than Zhuowen's. The commotion caused by Zhuowen and Elder Yuchi alerted many people in the villa. The 10 swordsmen also came out of their respective residences. When they saw Fan Shuang and the others coming out of the guest hall, they quickly went up to ask about it. When they found out that Zhuowen was fighting with an elder from the Ascension sect, they were shocked. The villa master was overconfident. The Ascension sect was one of the 5 sects in the Ji prefecture. Their elders were basically all void god transformation realm cultivators. They did not believe that their villa master had the ability to fight with such an expert. When the people from the Ascension sect and Gujian villa arrived at the empty land outside the villa, Zhuowen and Elder Yuchi were standing on the empty land facing each other. "Villa Master Zhuo, I won't hold back. Once I attack, even if you don't die, you will be severely injured. If you know what's good for you, kneel down and apologize now. I won't make things difficult for you," Elder Yuchi said indifferently. Zhuowen shrugged and said with a grin, "We have already come to this stage. Your words are useless. Let's fight." Elder Yuchi snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. She grasped at the air with her jade-like hand, and a divine sword that radiated a watery light appeared in her palm. Divine ability, Water Dragon Strangulation. Elder Yuchi swung the divine sword in her hand. Instantly, the terrifying water elements in the surroundings gathered together and turned into a water domain. Then, the streams of water gathered to form 3 huge water dragons. The 3 water dragons intertwined with each other and shot towards Zhuowen like drills. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He actually wanted to test how big the gap was between him and Elder Yuchi, who was already at the initial void god transformation stage, without using any of his trump cards. Thinking of this, Zhuowen gathered all the energy in his body and circulated the primordial grand mist technique at high speed. The purple ripples began to become violent, like a violent storm, condensing around Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen took a step forward with his right foot, and his waist bent like a bow. Then, he suddenly shot out like an arrow that had left the bowstring. Everywhere he passed, the sound of bowstring breaking could be heard. Boom! Zhuowen punched out. This punch contained his divine soul sword intent and the power of the primordial grand mist technique. It was also the most powerful energy in his body. Bang! The punch landed on the 3 water dragons, and an ear-piercing sound rang out. Then, the 3 water dragons exploded, turning into countless droplets that fell to the ground. Zhuowen retreated dozens of steps, and he only managed to stop himself when he reached the bamboo forest behind him. As expected of a void god transformation stage expert. Her strength is indeed strong. Zhuowen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He had used all his strength, and he was able to borrow the strength of an initial void god transformation stage expert. From this, one could see how terrifying the power of the primordial grand mist technique was. If it wasn't the primordial grand mist chant, but the simplified version of the grand mist chant that Zhuowen had cultivated in the past, Zhuowen would have suffered heavy injuries in this exchange of blows instead of suffering light injuries like now. "What? You actually blocked it?" Elder Yuchi looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. In all of history, he was the first Earth embryo transformation stage cultivator that could block the attack of a void god transformation stage cultivator. Is this guy a freak? How did he block Master's divine ability? The young woman's mouth fell open, and she was completely stunned. The people of the Gujian villa were also dumbfounded. The villa master was stronger than they had imagined, and he was even more monstrous. "Elder Yuchi, did you not eat? This attack is a bit too weak." Zhuowen walked out of the bamboo forest and said mockingly. Elder Yuchi's eyes darkened. "This guy actually dares to provoke me. Is he courting death? I didn't expect to be mocked by a mere void god transformation stage cultivator. It seems like I have to get serious. Elder Yuchi's eyes were cold as she slashed out 8 times with the divine sword in her hand. 8 streaks of sword chi flew over and surrounded Zhuowen. Then, they froze into 8 ice mirrors, covering Zhuowen's surroundings and above. This is the divine ability that made me famous, the 8 extreme sword dance. Many cultivators have died under this divine ability. I don't know how long you can last. Elder Yuchi's indifferent voice sounded. Then, Zhuowen realized that streaks of sword chi had appeared in the ice mirror around him. These streaks of sword chi flew out and blasted towards Zhuowen's vitals. What surprised Zhuowen even more was that when these streaks of sword chi landed on the ice mirror, they quickly bounced back. Moreover, the bouncing force was even stronger than before. These streaks of sword chi would become stronger as the number of times they bounced back increased. If he couldn't break through this ice mirror as soon as possible, he wouldn't have any more chances in the future. Master, Big Brother Zhuo is my savior. He has been protecting me all this time. Do you really want to kill him? In the outside world, Lu Miaozhen stood in front of Elder Yuchi, tears streaming down her face. Looking at Lu Miaozhen in front of her, Elder Yuchi's expression became much friendlier. She patted Lu Miaozhen's head and said, "Miaozhen, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. I won't really take his life. I'll just let him suffer a little. When he can't last any longer in the 8th grade sword dance, I'll release the divine ability and let him out." Hearing this, Lu Miaozhen finally felt relieved. Just as Elder Yuchi was about to say something, she abruptly raised her head. To her horror, she discovered that the 8-sided ice mirror within the domain of the 8th level sword dance was beginning to crack. In the end, the ice mirror completely shattered. Whoosh! A divine spear burning with powerful flames shot out from the shattered powder and directly flew towards Elder Yuchi. The half-moon divine fire spear was extremely fast. It cut through the air and instantly arrived in front of Elder Yuchi. Elder Yuchi was caught off guard and could only temporarily block the divine sword in front of her. Poochie! With a clear clank, Elder Yuchi spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backwards. The divine sword in her hand actually slipped out of her hand. You actually have a divine weapon at the peak of the 4th grade? How can you have such a high-grade divine weapon? Elder Yuchi felt that it was inconceivable. Although she was a void god transformation expert, the divine weapon she used was only a 2nd-grade heaven-breaking divine weapon. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.